Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for the Town of Superior Metropolitan Districts number 2 and number 3, and the Superior Metropolitan District number 1 Board of Directors, and the Superior Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners for Monday, October 22nd, 2018. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Phyllis, could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Trustee Sandy Hammerly.
Here.
Chris Hansen. Art Laces.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry. Town Clerk Phyllis Sarton.
All right, thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda, and the town manager let me know that the applicant for item number 4, the public hearing on the Superior Medical Office building signage, is a little bit delayed in getting here tonight, so we wanted to see if the board would be open to doing item number 5 prior to number 4, and so that will be a suggested change for the agenda. And anything else the board would like to change? Anything else?
I'd like to pull 3H, the construction contract with Fisher on pond equalization.
Okay. Trustee Ryan pulling consent agenda H. Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Motion by Trustee Ryan.
Second.
Second by Trustee Hammerly. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, we'll go on to the reports, questions, and issues. Who'd like to start?
I'll go.
Mark?
So I wanted to take a moment to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Pennington and Trustee Chris Hansen. Unfortunately, Chris is not here tonight. But both Sandy and Chris have faithfully served on our town board for over 8 years and have been involved in some of the most impactful decisions that our town board will ever make, including revising the comprehensive plan, approval of the Superior Town Center development, and both should be commended for their service. At the heart of each and every decision that they've both made while on the board has been their desire to do what they truly believed is in the best interests of our town and our residents. Sandy, you are always prepared. You ask thoughtful and probing questions. You are always respectful. You have vision, and you come up with creative ideas to solve our problems. I'm really going to miss that. You're meticulous, tough, and wicked smart. You're a staunch advocate for our residents, and your ability to drive discussions through the questions that you ask inevitably leads us to better, more reasoned decisions. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for your service. I've really enjoyed serving on the board from you. I've learned a lot from you, and I'm going to truly miss you. And that's it.
Thank you. Sandy?
Ditto. I just wanted to give a couple of quick reports. I attended the ACES, the Advisory Committee on Environmental Sustainability meeting for Trustee Hansen, and was very surprised and pleased to see that the committee is submitting a grant to, or a grant request to Boulder County Sustainability grant-making program to, and it's kind of creepy, but it's actually something we really need to do, which is for 2 seasons of the year, do a sort of the trash that comes out of the town of Superior. Our recycling rate has been stagnant at about 24% for 10 years. And so they are proposing to Boulder County that they be funded to conduct a sort in the spring and the fall, so we get a better sense of why aren't we having a better rate and what could we do to improve our recycling. I don't know what the timeline is on a decision by Boulder County, but if it's approved, there will be a request of a match from the town of Superior, and we can always opt not to do that. But I thought it was a great initiative of that committee to try and move us off the 24% mark and try and see that we can't move forward, because that is a goal of our town to be environmentally responsible. I also attended OSAC for Trustee Lasis, and one of the things that I learned at that meeting is that we actually have a program going through OSAC to monitor the raptors that are taking up residence in the town of Superior, and to help protect and enhance the raptor habitat here in the nest sites here in Superior. They're looking for volunteers to assist with the program. Obviously, they don't want everybody in town to know where the raptor hangout sites are, but it's important for us as a town to know that so that we can try and protect those. So if you have an interest in being a part of the raptor committee, contact Allison with the town staff, and she can hook you up with the volunteer who's chairing that effort. I mean, there were a couple of places they mentioned during the meeting. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And so it really is, as we continue to grow, we want to try and save the raptor sites. And so I would encourage folks to attend, if they're interested in that, to sign up. I also attended the ProStack meeting last week. We had a presentation from the Rock Creek School as part of public comment. They have, I think most of you know, they have moved to a new location up near Starbucks, and they have a dilemma that they don't have a playground nearby, that they don't have to cross a busy street. And so they came in and requested that ProStack consider that White Raven lot that we had talked about as a possible pickleball site as an option. And it sounds like the Rock Creek School parents are interested in helping to do fundraising for the project should it gain traction with the town. It was a very well done presentation. They've obviously done their homework, and just wanted to let folks know that they are really looking at they aren't looking at a private playground, but that a playground that would be more experiential for our children and provide more of an educational opportunity. So that was an exciting presentation. We don't often have a lot of public comment at ProStack, and we had 2 or 3 presentations that night. So it was very encouraging. And thank you again to Chris and to Sandy, and thank you to Mayor Folsom for completing his first term. And hopefully we'll see you back again.
Thank you, Sandy. As a follow-up to the trash sorting item, make sure that they're in contact with EcoCycle as well if they're not already. I had a tour over there recently. Their executive director is also the mayor of Boulder that I know pretty well, and met a man that does that exact function, trash sorting, and it was kind of fascinating learning about that. So they can definitely be a resource as well. So thank you. Kevin.
Since you brought up White Raven, when cars used to park on White Raven and it was folks from the apartment across the street, I forget the name of that apartment building. What's the name of that complex?
I don't know. The Summit?
No, that's not the Summit. Whatever it is, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah, we know
in Broomfield.
it is the summit at, I think, at Hanley.
Yeah.
Right, so there were people parking in White Raven,
Yeah.
which wasn't that big a deal. I've noticed that cars from that apartment or complex are now parking, since we took away White Raven, they're parking on the street there,
Okay.
and it's getting a bit crowded, and we might want to maybe consider that in traffic and safety. Do we throw in some no parking signs?
Yeah, we can take a look at that.
There, we obviously don't want to permit it for town residents only, but I've noticed it a few times just in driving by, so I thought it was unusual.
We'll put it on the list for the
Right.
committee to discuss.
Thanks. I don't have any announcements, but do want to thank Sandy for her 8.5 years of service. I think as you're going to the polls in the next couple weeks, you should look for a trustee exactly like Sandy, somebody that is thoughtful and prepared. And while we have not always agreed on every single issue, I know that you are coming to discuss an issue with professionalism and preparation, and I like the phrase Mark used, wicked smarts. And that's exactly what we need, and you will certainly be missed. And thank you for your service. And I'm sure we're going to continue to see you on the other side. And similarly for Chris, I think he's been a fantastic trustee and very dedicated to the service for the community, both up here as well as in other areas. And his voice of reason was always very much appreciated. So he too will be missed. So thank you again.
Thank you. And Sandy.
Okay, first the reports. Sandy Hammerly and I happened to go to the Avista Breast Center fundraiser. Is that the proper name? Is that what they're called?
Center for Breast Health.
Right, okay. This, if you're not familiar with it, is a attempt to create a one-stop shop regionally for breast cancer type of issues. And Sandy and I looked at each other during that presentation. This will be a huge regional draw, a huge regional amenity when it's successfully completed, and I think it will be. I mean, I was motivated to open up my checkbook in a way I've never been motivated to do so before, because of the wonderful mission that they're trying to achieve here right by us. And so I believe it's going to be another one of those regional draws that makes the area special. Secondly, you saw a picture floating around the internet of Sandy and me helping finish Cap's mural. Now, all of us were invited. It's just we happened to show up. So if you men would still like to do this, I'm sure Daryl can provide you a nice little panel so you two can make your mark. Anyway, that is near completion. It will be hung on the face of the underpass by Superior Liquor, right, Matt? Hopefully within the next couple of, I don't know if it's going to wait till spring or we're going to do it right away, but anyway, that'll be announced, I'm sure, in the Sentinel. That has been a very fun project for CAPS, and a lot of people participated in that one. An announcement went out for the supervisor for the Cultural Arts and Events Committee. The supervisor for Cultural Arts and Events in the town of Superior. And I have not read the specs of that position yet, but I've gotten some feedback on it. And it dawns on me that while I fully respect that staff is in charge of that position and that person, this actually goes to sort of a mission statement of the town of Superior. And I think in the case of when we're actually adding functionality that we haven't had before, it is advisable to run that definition by staff. We get it for every other position because it's usually newly funded and we have to approve it in the budget cycle. And in this case, we didn't have to approve it in the budget cycle because there's money already in the budget, but the mission's changed. And I'm fully on board with the change of mission, but it still is, again, strategic, and I think maybe the board would have benefited from seeing it. I don't think there's any problem going to emerge. Then I'm going to actually put in my last observation, and Alex will be glad this is my last meeting. Just a point of background, my dad laid asphalt for a living. He raised 9 kids laying asphalt. And I did his eulogy when he died, and he said, you make sure that when anybody needed asphalt laid, you know they asked for Harry. He was so finicky about his asphalt. So on Sundays, he would take us around to see the new asphalt he laid. He laid miles and miles of asphalt in I-70, and it was smooth. It was perfect. It was wonderful. So Sandy Pennington drives our newly asphalted streets and looks at them totally different than the rest of you, because I know what a fine lay of asphalt is. And having said that, I am not pleased with the new asphalt. The reason for it is where we get the different lays, that the seam is porous. My dad would tell you that's just a ready recipe for water to pool, ice to freeze, potholes to develop, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, just wanted to say that it's been bugging me for 8.5 years, and I do think there's a better way to do it. We're constantly replacing this stuff, and I just wonder if we're getting the best quality out of our subs that we can, and whether or not we can't get an extra year, an extra 2 years out of our lays of asphalt if we insist that they do it to a better standard. So anyway, that's for Dad. Okay, now my last meeting. I have to say, how I feel up here today is very much like sending my kids off to college. It's, are they ready, right? Are they ready to do this? Except I'm the one going off, right? But these are my kids, right? These are the youngsters up here. And I want to give every confidence to the town of Superior. These folks up here are ready for the task ahead of them. And I'm very impressed with the quality of all the candidates. You know, you can only pick 3, but all the candidates. I actually take great pride in the high quality of candidates, because I think it means hopefully we've set a good role model and they have something to emulate. So I actually think it's reflective of the quality up here on this board. To the new board, the old board's already heard all my stuff. To the new board, I've watched with interest as you've campaigned and you prepare, if you will, for a possible seat up here in a couple of weeks. And I want to just give you a word of unsolicited advice, and that is, you've been sort of sometimes forced into corners by some of the questions that residents have asked of you. How will you handle this? How will you handle that? What do you think about the Town 15? What do you think about Superior Town Center, et cetera? Know that once you come up here, none of that matters. When you come up here, you are going to be given tons of new information that you don't have access to right now. So what that means is, with that new information, hopefully you will be thinking about your positions, your former positions on topics in a much different fashion, because you will have the benefit of lots and lots of information. So don't be hesitant to accept that and go with it, because sometimes you're going to say, you know, when I was running, I said, it's a new slate up here. Once you're up in this seat, your job up here is to weigh what's best for the whole community. It's not what's best for your own backyard or anybody's particular backyard. It's what's best for the whole community. Having that little bit of sort of mama lecturing, I am looking forward to returning to my role as citizen activist. Some of you know that the way I got involved in this was in 2009, fighting the land swap, the potential land swap that would have put, I don't know, was it 50 homes, Matt, where Wildflower Park now is. And that was the only thing that was prohibited on that piece of land was residential. It could have been any sort of civic use, or it could have been no use at all, but residential wasn't allowed. And when the then town board sent out the notices within 100 feet of houses, that's all it was at the time. You had to notify properties within 100 feet. One of the first things I did, because we were redoing Chapter 16, was make sure that 100 feet became 1,000 feet. Because it wasn't fair that just those very neighbors were notified. But 50 houses were going to go in, and so another 50 Richmond houses were going to go in, and another Golden Design homeowner and I paired up and mobilized the whole community to fight that, and we successfully fought it. And then I became a trustee in the next election cycle, and I had to back off that project, right? And it took 6 years because it had to go through a very I wanted it to be a very extensive process that the community bought into, not Sandy, right? This is the exact lesson I'm trying to leave you with today. While I was the advocate for that particular thing, once I was up here, it had to be what's best for the community. And that took 6 years for that park to emerge because of all the public process that happened with it. Anyway, so I intend to continue to be active. You're going to see me involved in Rocky Flats issues and Jefferson Parkway issues. You're going to see me at CAPS meetings. I'll be attending First Fridays. I've sort of informally asked Sandy to make sure that continues to exist. I still have a Rocky Flats Stewardship Council meeting next Monday, a CAPS meeting this Thursday, so I'm not quite officially done. And at some point, I hope to become a grandmother. And then when I become a grandmother, you'll probably see me less involved in all of this stuff, right? Because my priorities will have shifted. I want to leave you with the fact it's been a great experience. You know, the ups and downs and the successes and some of the questionable decisions. I mean, we're all human up here. We try our best every week, and hopefully with 7 minds, we succeed more often than we err. But it's been a great experience, and call me, call Mama when when I go off to college, and check in occasionally, and I'll be around. Thank you all.
All right, thanks, Sandy. I'll go through my announcements and then a couple of words as well. On the 13th of October, we had an event at our house. It was a fundraiser for the Avista Center for Breast Health, and just want to recognize my wife, Leslie, and Shannon Noble, who's known to most in the community, founder of Mod Moms and a very big community advocate, put that event on and raised several $1,000s for that center. So also look forward to its successful evolution. On the 15th, went to a ribbon cutting at Cactus Wax Studio and welcome newest business to the Superior Marketplace. And on the 17th, I went to my first Dr. Cog meeting in Denver, and the group voted to support a resolution voted to pass a resolution in support of Initiative 110 and opposing 109. Those are the two initiatives related to transportation. And want to recognize Chris Hansen and Sandy Pennington for their last meetings. 8.5-year contribution by each of them, 17-year collective amount of service is a tremendous amount of time to give to your town. You know, we all have talents. Some people are better at coaching, and some are better at mentoring, and some like reading volumes of documents and spending hours at meetings. And you know, Sandy and Chris are two that really went above and beyond in giving to the community in those ways. And when I think of each of them, you know, I think of the most memorable contributions in my mind. These may not be their most memorable contributions, but they will really stick in my mind for what they contributed. And I think Wildflower Park, Sandy, for you is definitely, you know, a great story of how, you know, an issue concerned you, you got involved to create change, and then you discovered, hey, I actually enjoy this stuff, and went on to be a trustee for 8.5 years. And that's a great story. And, you know, Chris also had many great contributions, and one that will stick out in my mind for him is the second grade tours at Town Hall. He helped start that when his kids were in second grade, and mine were in second grade shortly thereafter, and I've been honored to be a part of that for at least 7 years or so, and, you know, hope that program lives on. So those are just two great memories in my mind. So, Sandy, I want to On behalf of the Board of Trustees and the Town of Superior, I want to present you with this plaque to recognize your years of service, and we have one for Chris, and I think we also gave one to Rita as well. So,
Thank you.
and we've got Rita's right here, so Rita will be getting hers. All right, and my final announcement is we were recently informed that Heather Craycraft, our Executive Director of the Superior Chamber, will be leaving us for a position at the CU Athletic Department. So we congratulate Heather in her new position with CU. Definitely sad news to see her leave. She's been a remarkable leader of the Superior Chamber for 12 years. The Superior Chamber is only 20 years old, and to have only 3 executive directors, and Heather there for more than half of the 20 years is pretty remarkable. The town board recently made some adjustments to our economic development budget. So I think it is an exciting time for us for the board to work with the chamber leadership, the board of directors of the chamber, and really try to maximize our efforts, both from the chamber's perspective and from the board's perspective. I think we all have common goals that we want to see good things happening with economic development townwide. So I look forward to working with chamber leadership to get that done as they work to select a new leader for the Superior Chamber. All right, that is it for my announcements. Matt?
Thanks. Well, I just want to echo the board's comments to you, Sandy. Thank you for everything you've done. It's hard to believe it's been 8.5 years. I still remember those land swap meetings, and they were not fun. So thank you for that. And enjoyed working with you over the last 8.5 years. I'm sure we'll still have lunch, right?
And you'll look at asphalt differently.
Right, yeah. There was some questions from the board about the arson investigation, so I asked Sergeant Chamberlain to attend tonight just to give the board and the community an update as much as he can.
Good evening. So there have been some questions about it. It is a continuing investigation. We're still working on it. As you know, unlike CSI or other shows, we don't solve it in an hour. Not every case is meant to be solved, but we are still working it. There's things out at labs. We're waiting for results. There's warrants that are out that could take 30 to 60 days to come back. It's an ongoing process. When and if we have someone that's going to be arrested, I'll let the board know. But until then, I can't provide any other further information without jeopardizing anything that we're working on. I understand it's frustrating. Everybody wants to have answers. It just doesn't mean we can't. It's still a priority to us, and it will continue to be. Every case we get, remember, every time we respond to anybody's house, we're responding there, it's their worst day. So we take every case we get seriously. We don't blow anything off. We work them as hard as we can. So that's what we're doing with this one, just like we do any others. Does anybody have any specific questions?
Can you tell us, is it one person or more?
Right now, we don't have a suspect. We have some people of interest, but no specific suspect.
Well, is the MO the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you just give the background? How many incidents are you?
So there have been 4 incidents total. Over the summer, the first 3 were exterior on houses. And basically, it was the same thing, a cushion from a lawn chair set on fire near somebody's porch. And then one that turned out to be inside of a residence, the last one.
And the last one was how many weeks ago?
3.
Okay.
And they were all in a
All
limited
along Castle
stretch
Peak, yes.
on,
They're all in
on
the same area.
Castle Peak, and they were within, what, 2 weeks of?
Yep.
So we haven't had another incident
Haven't
for
had
about a
another
month,
incident since then, yep.
right? There was if I recall, maybe a year or two, there was a fire in an open space area in town.
Unrelated.
That's unrelated? Was there ever an arrest made for that?
2.
2? Okay. So in terms of notifying the community and what people should be aware of, particularly on Castle Peak, but throughout the entire community,
Anything
lock your
suspicious.
doors.
Lock your doors. If you see something suspicious, report it. You never know what that one little thing that you think is silly and you aren't sure whether or not you should report it, call us. That's what we're here for. We're never going to get upset if we get called out to find out something doesn't really matter, isn't something important. What bothers us is if something is important and we don't find out about it until later. So if it's small, it doesn't matter how small, call us. That's what we're here for. We're going to come out and any information, it could be that one little tiny thing that leads us to a suspect in some other case or some case and results in arrest. Same as if you're a victim of a crime, please report it to us.
And for the incident that happened in the house, can you share anything about how the perpetrator gained access to the house? Was it did they break a window? Did they, break?
There's no forced entry.
No forced entry?
Sergeant Chamberlain, there was a image of someone's Ring camera that was circulating around the time of that indoor incident. Can you comment at all on that, whether that...
It's another open investigation. Don't know if it's related or not. It's a second open investigation.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we
If you have
appreciate
a
you
question, feel free to ask. I'll tell you what I can. I can't jeopardize investigations. So.
We understand that, but just, keep us posted. Obviously, we've got a very low crime community, so when something like this happens, it certainly raises everybody's nerves, and we'd like to be able to tell people something as soon as possible.
So on top of the obvious worry about arson, I'll tell you what I worry about. When Richmond built these homes 20-something years ago, the connection for the smoke detectors was cutting-edge technology. I must have heard from literally every neighbor on my block that at some point the smoke detectors fail, they beep, they always beep in the middle of the night, and so their solution is to rip them out. I'm really worried that there are disabled smoke detectors in the community.
And I'm sure they're that way in every community. I can't, none of us can make people make good decisions. Sometimes people make bad decisions, and that we can't account for everybody else's decision.
Right. But for
the fact that it beeps in the middle of the night, it's a 9-volt battery, it's $2.
It's, but it's worse than that, right? It's just so in these Richmond homes, sometimes replacing the 9-volt battery because it's connected into the wireless, it doesn't solve for the smoke detector because they're wired, and so the only choice you have is to physically remove it, and sometimes you may forget and not install a new one. So since we're having this dialogue and maybe people are watching, let's just use this.
Replace your fire alarms. If they're having problems with them, call the fire department. They'll come over and tell you what to get. They're there to help you. They will send people over. If you're having a problem with your fire alarm, they will come over and help you with it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good point. Can we have an article on that in the Sentinel?
Yeah. The fire district does an article, I think monthly in the newsletter, so we can have them do something on that.
I believe it's Fire Prevention Month. So
That's right.
Yeah, smoke detectors have got a life of 10 years or at max, I think, and most of the housing in this community is in excess of that age. So if you've got original equipment, it's probably time to call an electrician and get a new round of smoke detectors at a couple $100, but is that...
What a lot of people do is they use daylight savings as the opportunity to change all the batteries and all the smoke detectors, so I believe that's coming up.
It's good.
I think getting up at 2 in the morning to do it's ridiculous. They gotta change that.
That's a good point.
Funny.
So getting up at 2 a.m. is a little hard to do.
That's
but-
the only time they go off.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate you coming in
Thank
for the
you.
update. And Kendra.
I just want to say thank you to Trustee Pennington. It's been a pleasure working with you. I will definitely miss your input, so, keep in touch.
I as well. Ditto.
Okay, thank you, and that's all I have.
Thanks, Kendra. And Phyllis. Okay. All right, we are on to public comment. It's time for public comment. If you have comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items, now's the time. So just give a little wave and I'll signal you to come up. Neil, go ahead. Terry, on deck.
Going to be very quick relative to my other comments. This is really a comment to Trustee Pennington and Trustee Hansen in absentia, but to thank you for your service to, a dedication to this town over.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Neil.
I was start with
with you.
Neil Shaw, 1321 South Adalia Court. Let me go back. I forgot what I said, but I want to thank Trustee Hansen and Trustee Pennington for the service to the town that they've completed over the last 8 years. Your impact will be felt here for a very long time, and I think that whomever it is that gets elected, there'll be very large shoes to fill. But more importantly, whoever gets elected in the next couple of weeks, please continue your involvement and never pull any punches. We may need, whoever gets elected, not me, any of the other 4 that are here, we might need a little bit of time to get acclimated, but the training wheels ought to come off right away, and we want to get right back into it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Teresa.
I'm Teresa Clark, and I'm a Superior resident. Give me a minute, I'm trying something new. I wrote my notes in my phone this time instead of on my piece of paper, so reading glasses in small print is entertaining always. First of all, thank you. I've already said thank you to Trustee Pennington and to Trustee Ryan at Rita's going away ceremony. But yes, thank you for your service to our town. And it's an interesting thing that both of us got started in this gig trying to preserve land that residents needed in accordance to the rules and regulations of the town. And I'm certain that the residents around the Wildflower Park are grateful to you, and I know that I am as well. And Trustee Hansen in absentia, I've always been grateful for Trustee Hansen because he, more than anyone, is probably the reason that I did so much research and wanted to make sure that everything that came out of my mouth was based in fact. So I'm grateful for that too, because I think he has made me a better citizen in terms of participating with you all. I just had a few comments about the proposed road construction, and I'll just go quickly through it project by project. So number 1, the Marshall Road underpass. I thought this was a good idea, but I think it's good to let somebody else lead that because the benefit directly to Superior residents isn't quite as well defined as some of the, there's a lot of coordination, I should say, that has to happen between that. And I do think that because there's land ownership issues of Boulder County and Louisville, that it would be good for another party to lead that instead of us in terms of requesting TIP funding. The 88th Street Bridge, I was kind of confused that, actually I was disappointed that it even made it onto the list because it's included already in the 2019 CIP budget, and it part of it should be paid for by David Zaharias and his developer. So that one I was wondering why we're approaching for federal funding, and then not to mention that Louisville has some work to do on the other side of that as well. My favorite, and I didn't get the feeling that this is any of y'all's favorites, but that's okay, we can all disagree on this, but my favorite is the Campus Drive Bridge extension from the STC over to Louisville. And the reason that that's my favorite is because I've sat in these seats time and time and time again, and I've heard the developer of the STC say, I can't bring you any commercial because there's not enough residential build out in the STC. And one of the things that I'd like to see change about our STC is I don't want it to be just a place where the 1,400 new dwellings and their inhabitants go to hang out. I want it to be where Louisville residents come over and spend their money as well and get enthusiastic about it as well, just like we usually go to the Main Street in Louisville. So I like the idea of the connectivity of that. And then with the cost of it, there's $2 million coming available from the STC developer in lieu of the pre-K school. And I don't see why we can't use that $2 million. I suspect that that's going to have to go through a TIF process, but I don't see why we can't use that $2 million to go towards our share to pay for part of the bridge. And I also had the opportunity to carpool to a DRCOG meeting with a representative, a council person from the city of Louisville, and they're interested. So they're particularly interested because of what it does for 95th, what they can do on the 95th side on the connectivity of that. Then the McCaslin multi-use trail, number 4, we talked about this over, well, you guys, sorry, I'm being presumptuous. But you all spoke about this during the budget process meeting, and Mr. Lish even chimed in that this is a Superior-based project, and it's right on the top of the list for improvements for our OSAC committee. And I think that if we try to make that a connectivity thing to another community, it's not going to work out, because the only people it benefits really would be Superior residents. And I don't see how that connects us to the greater community at large. And then finally, my second favorite is the US 36 bikeway extension. And I like that because it connects our community to further down the highway into Broomfield. And to Trustee Ryan's point, I think it's a little more friendly in terms of getting your family out there for a bike ride and putting our bicycle community together in that way. So those are my comments for the evening. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Dalton and Ken.
Hello, my name is Dalton Villette. I live at 912 East Carval Place, and I'll keep this brief, but I have to begin by saying thank you. Thank you to Trustees Hansen and Pennington for your years of thankless service to our community. You have always been knowledgeable, thoughtful, and forthright on all local issues. Your commitment to improving our parks, such as Wildflower Park, recreation, infrastructure, impacts on the committees we've had in Superior will never be forgotten, and all of us here in Superior will remember your dedication to this town. We're losing two valuable voices on the board, but I just hope soon I will continue to see you here with us in the audience, working to make sure Superior stays Superior. Thank you again for your continued service to our community. And on a bit more of a policy-related comment, I've been busy as a candidate dealing with these annoying little things called campaign signs. And now, let's face facts, most of them are not the most beautiful things to see around our intersections or on our major thoroughfares. Many, including myself, even think they're a bit of an eyesore. And for myself as a candidate, they can cause nothing but headaches. They're often one of the most costly expenses in a campaign, and candidates frequently race around to make sure that they're standing upright, they're in the place they're supposed to be, they're not pranked into someone else's yard or completely vanish. And I would like to see, after this election, the board maybe address looking at some restrictions or procedures in place to restrict the use of campaign signs on our public lawns. I think they're becoming a bit of a hassle for most people, and they're becoming more and more of a nuisance than I think they are a benefit to candidates. And I believe by doing this, we would alleviate an unnecessary eyesore for residents, while also allowing candidates to focus on more pressing issues within their own campaigns and spend their time and finances in more strategic means than allow candidates to be more politically strategic in campaigning, such as canvassing, literature drops, being active online, email blasts, texting or calling people, and being further involved and solely relying on campaign signs, which can be kind of annoying to see as you're driving along Pitkin or Indiana. Thank you again very much for your continued service, and thank you again to Trustees Hansen and Trustee Pennington.
Thank you. Ken?
Good evening, Ken Lish, 1326 South Idalia Court. I too will be brief and will echo what everyone else has said. Thank you very much, Sandy, and to Chris and Rita a few weeks ago. Sandy, I don't know if you realize this, but when you and I met 5 years ago, when I first joined OSAC, I had no idea who you were, that you were even part of the board. I didn't know what the roles were or even exactly how our government worked, but over the several years that you are our trustee liaison, I learned a ton from you, and ultimately you're one of the real reasons I'm probably up here running today. So I want to say thank you very much for everything you've taught me and putting in all the service you have over the years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional public comment? All right, we'll close out public comment and go on to presentations. We have none, so we'll go on to consent agenda. And we have one item that's been pulled from the consent agenda, but do we have a motion to approve? We'll go ahead and approve A through J.
So moved.
Minus H.
Minus H. Okay, motion by
Second.
trustee Lace, second by trustee Hammerly. I think we need a roll call vote for this consent agenda.
Laces,
Yes.
Hammerly,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, trustee Ryan has pulled item H, adoption of a resolution approving a construction contract with Fisher Construction Incorporated for the pond equalization at the wastewater treatment plant for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1. Kevin.
Thank you. For some reason, my cover memo isn't coming up as the cover memo. It's now coming up as the...
While you're getting to that, I also want to echo my comments about, everybody's comments about trustee Pennington and trustee Hansen, and to thank all your constructive criticism of the time. And both of you really had the courage during, my favorite project, of course, is the US 36 McCaslin DDI, and you two had the courage to go with a forebrained idea and somehow stick with it, and I'll always remember that arch as Sandy's arch.
Oh, yeah, that's Sandy's arch.
Thank you.
The board finally came along.
Great. And great. And we do have issues with that paving. We'll take care of that.
So Alex, for some reason, I'm not able to pull up the document, but I want to talk a little bit about the process here. So we did a bid. You had your consultant, Dave, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing his last name, Takeda? Takeda helped. So I've got a few questions about Dave's role. And then the bid itself, the original bids came in anywhere, I think there were 5 or 6 respondents, between about $950,000 and I think about $2.1 million. And then eventually it was de-scoped. I don't know if it was de-scoped, but the awarding bid was about $530,000, if my memory serves me correct. The original scope was to include sludge removal and disposal, regrading of an effluent equalization pond, installing a synthetic liner, buried piping, site cleanup, and installing the synthetic pond cover. So how do we get from 950 to 5 something? Give me the story.
Okay, so there are 2 ponds out there. And originally we were going to take the larger pond and modify that, take all the sludge out, put the synthetic liner in, and essentially have that serviced as the project. When the bids came in under budget, we looked at what we... Over budget, yeah, I'm sorry. We looked at what we really needed, and we felt we could get by with a smaller pond, so we went to the smaller pond that now we're taking the sludge out and doing all the piping and so forth. So the larger pond had a lot more area. It also was reducing the size of the larger pond and required grading and restoration of some portion of that pond. So those are the major issues. And Jim, I don't know if you cover them all. Jim Widener is our utility superintendent, and he's the one that was involved in the value engineering. And what we did was we sat down with the contractor, the engineer, and our operators and looked at what we could do to bring that project under budget. So we had a number of suggestions, and we worked with the contractor to get the project down where we could afford it.
And so was the, sorry, I'm struggling, A, because I don't have all the documents in front of me, I assume they've been, I can't pull them up.
Kevin, Matt just emailed us the cover memo, so if you look in your email.
Did you guys have the same issue?
I'm having the same issue as well. Yeah. I pulled it up this afternoon.
Yeah, same.
And now
Magically.
it's resolution.
So some of the breakdowns of the savings, we cut out $380,000 from the original bid. $183,000 was in sludge removal because we're going with a smaller pond. We had grading and restoration that we no longer needed. It was about $138,000. There was less piping, about $66,000. The liner was smaller, So that was a decrease of about 10,000. So that's how we pulled the project down to where we could.
So walk me through the process. So did you, based on the original bid, have an apparent successful offer and then negotiate with them on the de-scoped, or did you, and the disappointed bidders were not included in the de-scoping exercise, or you only?
We only negotiated with the low bidder.
And from a technical qualification perspective, were they I mean, I didn't see that in the cover memo. Were they also the highest technically, or just the lowest bidder?
But they had very high recommendations. We had used them on the construction of the lift station at the downtown Superior. They constructed that lift station. I'm not sure we selected them, but I think. So we selected them through a competitive process. They performed very well on that particular project, so we had experience with them, but they had very good recommendations on other projects that they had built.
It's some pretty material de-scoping, right? To go from 950 roughly to 530,000 roughly. As a guy who grew up running big procurements for the government, this would make me uneasy, right? So you selected the low bidder, who may or may not have been the technically highest score, negotiated with them and only them in the de-scoping exercise, and the disappointed bidders did not have a chance to resubmit or were engaged. So I think this is really necessary work. I personally think this should have been rebid when it came in over budget. I think it should have been de-scoped and sent out to the other bidders. So I'm afraid I have no knowledge around whether or not they're technically capable, whether or not they're the high cost bidder or the low cost bidder, but without a process where they were being evaluated to the other bidders for an identical scope of work, I'm personally not going to approve this tonight.
I'd actually, Matt, what's your response to that?
I mean, I think we have time, if the board would like, I think we have time that we can rebid the project. Alex came to me with the project and the bids we received, and I said, we absolutely cannot move forward with a project that's $400,000 over budget. So he suggested to me and Jim as well that with the experience we have with the company that's being recommended tonight, that we meet with them and see if we get the project under budget, which they were able to, and the reason we brought it forward.
So how did there become such a big disconnect between what we thought it would cost and what it actually cost?
Thank you, Jim Widener, Utility Superintendent. Yeah, we got, I think everybody, even the bidders, got caught off guard on how much the sludge removal was going to be. So when we took that out of the equation, that's how a lot of the costs went down. And then the earthwork, when we were squaring off the ponds, we were going to have to put a lot of earthwork and have to compact that and get it down. We just missed it. Dave Takeda, the engineer that did the cost estimate, would tell you that he was awfully surprised as well, as some of the other bidders. And then when we reduced the size of the pond, that really helped, because we were kind of getting greedy on kind of squaring off the pond and making it bigger. But we can run it the way we have it now, and it is awfully important. As Trustee Ryan said, this project is very important, as the current ponds will not give us the capacity we need. They are so full of sludge. They're about 8 feet deep, and they're about 6 feet deep in sludge. And they have never been removed of sludge, I think, since they've been in. It's been 25 years, I think. We had to bring the ponds down a little bit because we were having some plant problems, and there was we brought them down about 5 feet, and you could see the sludge, and there was actually, when the water was getting pushed out there, it was cutting like a canyon through the sludge. It's unbelievable. So I'm glad that Trustee Ryan did mention it is an important project. And with the reason why I think it's probably mostly me that decided to go with Fisher is I worked with them all the way through this lift station, which was quite a bear for other contractors, and they whizzed right through it. We didn't have any problems, didn't get a lot of RFIs. They're very local. They know the market well, and they've worked on some other things, just odds and ends for Wayne Ramey, our operations contractor. Wayne's very familiar with them.
So let me just suggest that these are awesome evaluation criteria. Past experience, awareness of the local environment. And if you include these things in your RFP, they will score very high from a technical evaluation perspective. And then, so I'm not questioning whether or not they're valued or not, but I feel like I'm in this impossible situation where, to the best of my knowledge, those were not evaluation criteria. And so the other bidders, if I was a disappointed bidder, frankly, watching this video, I said, well, wait a minute, I didn't get a chance to descope to $535,000 or whatever, roughly that. I could have done it for that price too. We negotiated with them because they were the low price. From a process perspective, when it is material, and I would argue a 40% reduction is material, amend the RFP and ask for a revised response. It'll slow things down for a week or two, and then that becomes part of the evaluation packet. At this point, my fear is that what happened last year on the road construction, where we slowed down a process and we had to push out the RFP again, by the time we got the bids, I think it was, I want to say $100,000 more expensive. So I'm a little worried here that by asking to redo the process, it's going to cost the town more money. And so Alex and Matt, I think we have to look at the process, and we did a nice job here making sure it was a public bid, but there was a material change when it descoped. And that material change should have been, the other bidders, in my viewpoint, should have had the opportunity to respond accordingly. So again, I'm not suggesting we picked the wrong contractor, not suggesting they're not excellent and it won't be the lowest price next time, but from my perspective, the process has not given me sufficient confidence. So I guess the question would be, what's the worst case scenario? Is there anything, government procurement speak, urgent and compelling that would require us to approve this evening? Is the sludge going to overrun and break the system in somehow? Is it going to impact the community or?
Well, no, I mean, I can't speculate on that, but we are under, we have been warned by the state that we need to get this lining in place. I don't know, before I got here, I think. So we would like to get going as soon as we can. And we do have a lot of internal problems in the plant with, one of the things we're changing is how the pond operates. We have only one way for the water to go in and to come out. So not everything that comes out of the plant gets to the ponds, and it gets caught in our pumps and our mixers, rags and stuff. The way we're building it now, we'll have an inlet and a separate outlet. So we'll be removing sludge as we bring the effluent in. So all the influent will have a chance to settle out any of the rags and stuff. So it is, I mean, I would like to get it going soon. I mean, just based on operations, the problems that we have. We did replace those pumps, and I would hate to have to replace those again. That could cost us more money. The internal equipment costs, we get rags wrapped around our mixer, and that's a 25-foot mixer, and we had to rebuild that. So there are some issues.
So I think to Kevin's point, and I agree with you completely that, when we are looking at our process for bidding out jobs, last year we went through the road project and, we didn't bid it out, and that slowed us down for a year. now we're bidding this project out, but then we're changing the scope of it and we're not rebidding it. And I think that that's a total, that's a mistake in terms of the process. I think that, as a matter of process, we should always give everybody who has responded to our bids, the opportunity to, rebid if the scope of the project has changed, number one. Number two, I want to make sure that if we are going to make, decisions of this magnitude where we're going to be spending this kind of money, that we're doing it smartly and appropriately. And, if the scope of the project changes because, we didn't anticipate that it was actually going to cost this much, that's one factor. But if the scope of the project, if just the market is what the market is, and, we need to actually get this thing rebuilt, we're rebuilding the headworks, and that's a $4 million project. At least that's what we've budgeted for. I don't want us putting a Band-Aid on a huge problem. And, if this is something that we're budgeting for, it's a once every 25-year fix. I'm concerned here that what we're doing is we're reducing the scope of the project to try to fit it within the budget, but potentially not actually solving the bigger problem. And if the bigger problem is, well, we actually need to spend a little more money and we need to actually budget for that appropriately, let's have that conversation. I just don't want to rush into making a decision to get some project started if, 2 years down the road, we realize that, we should have actually spent a little extra money to fix the problem.
And I think that's why we have
totality.
Right, but I think that's why we have we pay Takeda to advise us on that, presumably.
Yeah, we had, I think we just had a little bit of, we got the location of the pond, I think, well, I don't think, but that's what shot it up. We originally did start at that 1.1, but we thought, well, let's move it away from the building, do all this stuff that we really didn't need to do. And it was all the grading and the fill to cut off the pond the way we wanted to. And, right now, in talking with the operators, the biggest thing is the way it's going to operate. And believe me, it won't be it's not a Band-Aid, and it's certainly not a stranded type of investment. It'll be something that.
Is this weather impacted, presumably?
Yeah.
So if we tell you guys to go back, do a 6-week amendment, does that put us spring, summer? Does that kill the?
Yeah, I agree with both of you on the process and would like to see it done differently in the future. But we have been, for years, hearing from neighbors about smells and saying we're going to do something. And I don't want to say to those neighbors, we're gonna delay this another bit of time. So I'm sympathetic to those concerns. I agree with those concerns. I think we improve, but I am not in favor of delaying this work because it all is to make our systems perform better so that those that are living in the immediate vicinity of it can you speak to?
I can speak to it will cut down. We have with the depth of the sludge, like I said, I don't know how long the sludge, the sludge should be pulled every few years, and it's been 20-some years. We have a water cap on there right now that's slowly diminishing, and that's causing smells. And we'd like to just get rid of all of it and just run a more efficient pond the way we've designed it. Takeda did a good job designing it, and it will run very efficiently, and I can speak to that personally that it would be a good step towards eliminating the smells.
So can we hear from all three of you, Matt, Alex, and Jim? Is this a long-term fix? Are we doing what needs to be done for the long term? And if not, what are we giving up?
I can't, right now it will be the long-term fix. It'll be a good fit. It'll be
How long will it last?
Longer than I'll be here, probably. It'll last a while because
5 years, 10 years, 15, 20?
25. Usually liners, and we're going to bring down and you look at these things, it's like, oh no, but we're looking at some more advantages of actually cutting the pond size down. I think is going to be an advantage because we're going to be dropping the level up and down. Right now, we fill it up and it just sits there. It gets algae. It gets bad. Right now, we're going to have to be more efficient. And I know the operators will be pleased with this. And so the liner will last about 25 years or so. I think this one lasted about that. I think it was only about 20. They do need replaced, and so the replacement will be less. It'll be much more efficient, and in the future it won't cost as much to reline it. And we'll have a pond that we can operate, without sending a bunch of sludge and rags.
You agree?
I agree with Jim. And staff, we feel comfortable with this company, but if the board has concerns about the process, we can rebid this, bring it back to the board on December 10th, and get the project going as quick as we can after that.
And when was it going to go? When was the work going to be done?
Now.
Yeah. So we're talking, it'll be a 30, 45-day delay.
And how long will the whole project take?
I think about 8 weeks, roughly. Yeah.
So Matt, will it be delayed to the spring because of the winter, or will you get to it in the winter?
We'll start work right away, but there will be weather delays. I mean, there was going to be weather delays even if we started now.
Right. So in your opinion, in somebody's opinion, how much will this delay the work being completed, the completion date? If we rebid it.
If we rebid it, yeah, I could push it into the spring. Yeah.
And when was it going to be completed?
I was hoping by the end of the year. We were going to give them till January, but Bart feels very confident that it can be, if we can get with this good weather. The liner is one of the most important things. It needs good weather to go down in that. I think it has to, kind of like doing roads, it has to be a certain temperature.
So in other words, a 6-week delay for the process, to improve the process, is going to be roughly it's obviously not 1-to-1, but
we could probably have it built by then, pretty close.
Well, I'm hearing, so I want a 6-week delay with some, the weather's not going to be terrible, hopefully, between now and January 1st, January 30th. But obviously, if we have a 6-week delay, now you're starting on December 15th, January 1st, and it sounds like you have call it a 6-week process, which you're going to have some pretty bad weather between January and February, just historically. You're going to have, ground's going to be frozen, it's going to be snow. Sure. So I'm going to sort of throw you that. Are there urgent and compelling safety reasons, cost reasons, quality of life reasons, while this needs to be done now? And the process, yes, there were some process errors, but there are urgent and compelling reasons.
Process errors, all right. Do you want us to go back and negotiate with the other?
Yes, I think if there's a material, let me be clear.
I mean,
there's a material change in the scope of work. We didn't rebid it. That's a process error. Unambiguous.
Do we want us?
Do you agree?
No. Do you want us to go?
Alex, you're getting defensive here. Yeah, that is a clear process error.
Do you want us to renegotiate with the other bidders, or to put it back out on the street and open it up for?
There's material change in the scope of work. Whatever the process is for a scope of work to be bid competitively, that process should be followed. If there's a material change in that scope, the process can't be shortcut to the person that was awarded on the whole scope. It's a shortcut to the process.
Sure. Yeah, the other alternative is to award the original scope of the project.
And I'd love to hear from Dave on, I think Mark was going down that line. If we think we should, I'd like to have some negotiations with if their original bid was $950,000, but we didn't negotiate on the entire scope, but I don't, we don't have Dave here to tell us whether or not that entire scope is, was that our dream list of things we wanted, or is that things we really needed?
It was more of a dream list on a lot of counts, the way we squared the pond off, and now we're going to kind of use the same geometry that we have. and that's not going to affect the project. And if you go, they did have some itemized things in their bid, and Fisher was low on most of them. Some of them, I think they're a little different, but all in all, we felt comfortable that Fisher would come in the lowest anyway. And of course, based on our working with them, so that was.
If this were, I don't want to monopolize this, but if this were a competitive RFP under my supervision, I would have brought the revised scope to the other technically qualified bidders, given them a chance to rebid. If they were the low-priced, most qualified bidder, then they'd get the business. If they were not the low-priced, most qualified business, then I'd go with I'd do the exact. I think it's very possible you're going to end up with the exact same result here, but I don't know that because we did not follow when that material change happened. That's where things broke down a little bit.
Okay, so earlier you'd asked the question: is there compelling, are there compelling reasons to delay this? And I mean, I think that's or to not delay it, to not delay it.
I feel very strongly that there is, as far as from what we're hearing from the state, they come out every year and we get written up every year on that pond and the smell and the algae and the fact that it's we get so far. I work with that plant every day, and we get so far behind the 8 ball on our equipment, and we're always having to replace pumps and things, and this is a huge step into preventing that. And I wished it was built now, so that's why I feel the urgency.
Okay, so I agree. I think we've got duly noted to improve the process, but I think we owe it to ourselves to get this fixed. We owe it to the residents that are adjacent to it to get it fixed sooner rather than later. So I would urge the board to support moving this forward tonight.
And if I could add one more thing. When we first started this, we were looking at that 1.1 pond, and Dave Takeda did come in at, I think, $521,000 on his estimate. So as the scope creeped, it was my fault that I didn't get this into the budget properly. So I definitely take the hit for that. But
okay.
I just want to make a comment that I read this and went, wait a minute, how did something get cut in half? And it is problematic for me. I don't know anything about this, but if somebody comes back to me and says they cut it in half, I think one of two things. Either you're not accomplishing what we need to accomplish, or we didn't plan correctly. And what did we cut? And so I am concerned that we have cut this in half, and I got no explanation on this. And so you really damaged yourself, because I know we all want this to go through. The two other bidders were not that far off from the low bidder. And so what concerns me, it comes back to what Kevin said, maybe one of these other two bidders would have come in if they saw the different scope and given us a better product at a close price. And so it really concerns me that we're going with the low bidder on a completely different approach. And I don't like it that it's gotten to the point where, you're not saying it's at a crisis, but you're saying it's at a crisis. And so you've put me in a really unfair position, because I want to make a decision based on what is the right business decision for the town. But I also think of the residents who live in Saddlebrook and Bell Flatirons who have to deal with the issue of this plant. So, I want to say to you, I really don't appreciate that you guys have put me in this position, because there's no way in my business environment, and it's a little tiny food bank, I would be able to get away with this. And so I'm torn right now because I know this is an important project. I am also concerned that we're shortcutting. I mean, we had a bigger project, and now we're talking about a smaller project. And so I worry, is this going to only last 20 years, particularly as we add a third population into our town with Superior Town Center?
Yeah. Well, our goal is to get rid of the ponds eventually, to get the plant redesigned in a different configuration to where we might not even need the ponds anymore. So, you know, you weigh that with, you know, we were looking at a bigger pond, and now that we've decided on the smaller pond, we're actually feeling better about it, actually. And just because we'll be more efficient at running it.
So I'm not sure which way this is going to go, and I hope we could just give this a little bit more time to deliberate, and we don't follow into that parliamentary procedure that I kind of loathe so much. But I personally would be amenable to a informal process with a minimal delay where you're outreaching to the technically qualified bidders saying, we have de-scoped this. Is this something that you're interested in?
Okay.
And coming back with a revised memo saying, based on that, we still have the winning bid. So maybe it's not a 6-week delay. And I recognize you're going to have 3 new members of a board, right? And so I can't speak to them, but I personally would be supportive, given the fact you have convinced me that there are some urgent reasons why, you know, the smell and other reasons why we should do this, but we're not quite in crisis yet. And process, to me, in a bid is really important, obviously. And so I'll meet you in the middle, personally, if we could just do that semi-informal outreach, revise the memo, saying we still got the best bidder, or surprise, we got a new potential successful offer, and,
So
you know.
we can take the revised scope and maybe go to the other bidders and say, here's what's your price.
Right,
for
and
that.
maybe that's a delay. So if we don't get call to motion, if we don't get a call to question tonight, you know, because if this is rejected on you tonight, then it may be harmful to the process, and I don't know if it'll pass or not. But that I would be just thinking out loud here and deliberating. I don't know what other people's thoughts are.
So let's just check with Kendra. Does this meet the standards we need to meet if we go back to the other 3 bidders who weren't allowed to adjust for the smaller scope? Is that acceptable legally?
Yes, that's legally acceptable.
But in order to move this forward, we will need a vote at
Yeah, we
a
should
future meeting.
We could,
Right.
We could just continue it until
You can
it's
either
rebid.
you can either continue it or vote and, you know, vote on it tonight.
So personally, I mean, I would love to move forward with this and get it done, but what I want to do personally isn't what we should do, right? The process, you know, rules need to be followed. I was really disappointed when the road project came up in front of the board and it wasn't bid out last year. I think the board did the absolute right thing by not moving forward at that point in time and requiring that, you know, these types of projects get bid out, because that's what the law requires and that's the process that we're supposed to follow. It ended up, that was a $100,000 mistake, and that ended up, you know, we spent more money on a project than we should have had to do had we followed the rules. But we did the right thing by not cutting corners and by insisting on the rules being followed. I think the same thing is true here. The rules need to be followed, and when a scope of a project changes, everybody that has bid needs to be notified, and I just don't think that we can cut those corners here. You know, the smell issue is generally an issue for the summertime. It sounds like if we can reach back out to these other bidding parties, get this on the agenda in early December, we're not going to lose too much, and the project will still get done by, you know, spring, you know, early summer. And I think that unfortunately is the right way to do it, and I think we should insist upon following the rules.
Okay.
I am not convinced about this de-scoping. I feel dense on it. but since you said it, you weren't convinced either. So if I were continuing, I would insist on a further explanation of why the descoping happened, and I would need your assurances from all three of you managers that this is in the best interest of the town, and wanted to reiterate Trustee Lacis's comment. If we in fact need the full project, then let's do the full project and find the money. So I'm not convinced on that. So I'd suggest you try to convince the new board.
We'll provide that information in the next memo the board gets on the descoping. Now we got what's been. I will say that Jim, expertise in this field, I mean, we are lucky to have Jim on staff. He's done so many good things for our plants and the maintenance and upkeep and upgrades and grants he's gotten through the state that, like I said, we're lucky to have him on staff.
And Jim, yeah, thank you. I mean, I agree. This has nothing to do with you haven't found that it wasn't designed properly, and you have I've got a description for what you do, which would be, so when you think you know where I'm going there. I really appreciate the work you're doing. This has nothing to do with that work. This is just about the process and taking these lay people up here and convincing us that you have selected the right bidder, the right awardee, and the way to do that is through the competitive process. And this time we're 80% of the way there. Let's just get 100% of the way there, please.
Okay, so the desire of the board is to pull this from the agenda and bring it back at a future meeting when it's ready. Okay. All right. We'll move on to our next agenda item. We had moved 5 before 4. Do we still want to do that, or are the parties for agenda item 4 here?
They have arrived.
Okay.
So.
Is the board good with flipping the agenda back to its original configuration to agenda item 4 next? Okay. All right. We'll do that, just out of respect that everyone's here and ready to go. All right. Next on our agenda is item number 4, public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving a final development plan amendment to allow for additional wall signs on the medical office building at 3 Superior Drive, Lot 1A, Block 12, and associated parking garage at 5 Superior Drive, Lot 1B, Block 12. Public hearing's now open. Do we have proof of publication?
Yes, I do.
Proof of publication is confirmed. All right. We'll start with presentation. Welcome.
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
Good.
Just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak and present on behalf of our FDP amendment for the Superior Medical Center. Just as an aside.
Do you mind starting with your name?
Yeah, sorry. Benjamin Rosenfeld with HSRE Superior. We are the owner and manager of the Superior Medical Center. We were also the developer of the garage before we transferred it to the district a couple weeks ago.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for the opportunity. We had the opportunity to speak to Planning Commission 2 times. There was a continuation, and we heard from Planning Commission and heard from the Louisville residents, and have kind of also leveling their concerns also with the needs of our project and our existing tenants is what we're presenting to you today. We believe that the signage amendment will provide the building, the town, current and future tenants the recognition it deserves as a destination for health and wellness. So kind of real quickly, I want to talk about kind of the global healthcare impacts and how that's driving our request, and then kind of drive down into the physical request as it relates to the medical center itself and kind of the standard requests around signage. So you guys may have read about it, heard about. There's the retailization of healthcare, and it really what it is the retail market for healthcare delivery has arrived across the healthcare industry. We've seen ample evidence of new retail purchasers who are patients actually shopping for the lowest price imaging exams, primary care, purchasers opting for convenient care options, employees carefully selecting their own plans at insurance exchanges. And this phenomena has been labeled as the retailization of healthcare because patients now have an increased choice when deciding between providers, services, and sites of care, just like when they go to a shopping center or a restaurant. So with that is a focus on consumer-oriented care. And this has made branding, convenience, and patient experience paramount for providers when deciding on new medical office space. For many providers, each site of care represents a well-distributed strategic approach aimed at caring for the entire population. Providers are thinking of their strategy like a Costco or a Starbucks by going to where the growth and population is, and that's one of the many reasons why they're attracted to the town of Superior. Critical to their decision is signage and branding, which provides wayfinding for elderly or stressed patients, peace of mind for the patients in the neighborhood when they're driving by, and an announcement to the community that they have arrived. One other impact is the Affordable Care Act has caused massive consolidation, resulting in independent groups like Cornerstone and Touchstone focusing on branding, affiliations, and other ventures, kind of like the sports stable, really to thrive in this new healthcare environment. And as an owner, this impacts our universe of potential tenants because the 1 and 2 physician group providers is limited. Especially in new facilities like ours, you know, that demand high rent, and for providers to come out of pocket for a large portion of their initial tenant improvements, spending millions of dollars. Also, the groups that can make an investment in facilities like this and in the community, they want to be recognized for many of the reasons that I've mentioned. And back to the physical Superior Medical Center itself, you know, wayfinding is so key. Elderly and new patients need help finding the Superior Medical Center at this new location. You know, often when you're in need of healthcare services, you're disoriented, confused. You know, you're preoccupied with thinking about what the results are of the test when you arrive. And you know, as we've seen, and as our provider tenants will attest, once you see that logo, it creates a sense of calm and reassurance. There also is, you know, the fact why signage is important is the SMC, as we call it, the Superior Medical Center. It's in an active development, which, you know, can be confusing for patients, especially many of them, as I mentioned, are arriving there for the first time. And also to mention, you know, Superior hasn't had a large healthcare presence, so this would be the first kind of commercial medical office destination health and wellness facility in the town of Superior. So all those factors are why we're up here asking for this amendment. I wanted to talk a little bit about the economic impact of the Superior Medical Center, and this is based on existing data and projected. Currently, our building is only 43% leased. We are in conversations with a well-known healthcare system who is extremely interested in leasing space, and the results of this meeting and what we're able to achieve will have a large influence on their coming into our building. But based on the full build out, we're going to have 130 employees, roughly $8.5 million a year in gross salary, which is $65,000 per employee. And that, in terms of attracting population to downtown Superior, that's 85,000 visits and 68,000 unique patients will be coming to Superior, presumably for the first time.
Would you just repeat those numbers once more?
Yes. So 130 employees, 8.5 million a year in gross salary, 65,000 per employee, and that's 85,000 total visits and 68,000 unique patients. So one other thing. Oh, and so currently, as you can see here, Cornerstone and Touchstone, who currently don't have signage, they're going to speak in a moment, kind of their personal reason for it. And then we also have Boulder Community Health, who operates the urgent care and provides primary care services. So one other interesting thing I want to talk about, and it's a reason why branding is so important, is Touchstone, Cornerstone, and one of the prospective tenants I mentioned are in the process of setting up strategic affiliation, which is aimed at reducing cost and increasing quality by providing these services in an outpatient setting rather than on a hospital campus. And the tendency of this friendship or loose affiliation, I don't want to speak on behalf of the business arrangement, that'll make up roughly 58% of the building. So I'd like to have Joe come up or Dr. Sheen could come up and talk about his reason for requesting signage for Cornerstone and kind of everything that they've done as a part of the community.
Hi, Joe Sheen, Cornerstone Orthopedics, 3 Superior Drive, and thanks for having me up here. And we presented some of the same stuff at the Planning Commission a few weeks back, and we've been working on this since we moved in February, trying to get some signs for our patients. But I just want to tell you a story of a young boy, and this is typical of a lot of the kids that we see. And this young hockey player unfortunately was taken to the boards and dislocated his shoulder. Well, then the trainer calls me and says, this young kid dislocated his shoulder, what should we do? I said, send him over right now. I get him over to my office, look at him, I send him downstairs to Touchstone, and we get an MRI right away, and it turns out he's got some cartilage tearing, so we took him to surgery that week, fixed him up, and now he's doing well, he's rehabbing, he's gonna go over to Impact and get return to sport clearance and move on to doing the things he loves to do. And that's just a small example of what we wanted to do all along with this facility. And so when I stood before this board almost 5 years ago now, just extolling what a great project this is and how Superior is going to be a destination of health and wellness, it's all starting to come to fruition, of course. And that little example is just, the word is getting out. And when I just talked to about 300 hockey parents about what we're trying to offer their kids, and what we're offering their kids is only a healthcare model that has only been offered to the elite athletes, but now we're bringing it down to just everybody. And and so we're not just talking about a medical office building full of tenants. We're talking about an integrated system of healthcare that is a new paradigm, a new model for how we want our kids and our athletes to be treated. Not even talking about the older population, but we've got other municipalities, and we had firefighters from Adams County coming to us and say, we really like your model, we like the way it works, we like the way it flows. And so that's what we wanted to do with medical office buildings, to showcase that. And so it's not just asking for a bunch of signs, it's just making this kind of a cornerstone, so to speak, of the community, and what we're trying to do with us, partnering with the sports table and all the other healthcare providers that are in the building. And so I wrote a letter, of course, to you folks too as well, and just to let you know that, yeah, we've had trouble with our patients trying to find us. So the wayfinding is a big part of it, but the branding of what we're trying to do with sports and health in our community is kind of the bigger part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tyler Rowanzon at 3 Superior Drive. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Touchstone Medical Imaging. Thank you very much. I thought Dr. Sheen did a great job of giving the overview of how we look at our locations within medical. Signage is not just retail. When you think retail of a place you go to buy your cup of coffee, in medical it is changing. And signage is a very important aspect of how our patients are able to find our locations. Consider, if you will, you're taking mom or dad back for an x-ray to rule out whether or not a nodule has increased in size. You went with mom and dad to the family practice provider, and that has now become a concern. You're being asked to go to a new location that you've gone to in the past, and you really are starting to worry as to what is going to happen. The future starts flashing before you. You start thinking about, what am I going to tell our son and daughter about this? What do I need to tell our sisters about this? What do I need to tell about my brother about this? In that process, you're also trying to find the location of who is going to treat mom or dad. This is why this has become so important for medical with signage. As you're going up to the location, you're desperately just looking for that beacon of hope, right? You're looking for that sign. As you find that sign, you can now drive to that sign as it draws your family in, and your focus can remain on your family members. That's what we look at it with medical. This is not just something where we want to throw up signage and illuminate a city block or illuminate a neighborhood. That's not what our goal is. I believe we've done a good job of working with the Town Planning Commission in discussing ways that we can illuminate our signage without being a hindrance onto our neighbors. And I think we can do that effectively in working along with them. We welcome the opportunity to present this evening before you and all of the comments that come about from the city of Louisville and Superior. I want to take up a lot of your time, but that's how we approach signage with medical. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I want to go over kind of how we got here. So on September 18th, I stood up here. We heard from the commission and Louisville residents that really the existing signage illumination was a concern, specifically the urgent care sign and how that was illuminated all night. That was the first that I heard of that, and about 5 or 6 people came up and spoke of how it was an annoyance. The Planning Commission also echoed that it was sort of unneighborly to have that up there. We heard that, and 2 days later, we spoke with BCH, who operates the urgent care, and we talked to them and let them know kind of how everyone was feeling. And we have implemented since September 20th, turning off the sign at 9:30 p.m. And it's on that late only because that's 30 minutes after the close of business. The urgent care runs until 9. Again, it's currently permitted to be illuminated indefinitely. And we've also made a commitment, regardless of what happens today, for our existing permitted signs to have the same approach, turning them off 30 minutes after business, as well as turning them on only during dusk.
Why the 30 minutes after and why not when they close?
Because sometimes you have people coming in right at the nick of time, and then also the exams go after, and is another reason why. It's a good buffer. And then, so we had our first planning commission meeting, and we also heard that the signs that we proposed were too big and too many. So what we did is we then came back and we reduced the size of all and I'll go through it, so I'll just, it's easier to see it diagrammatically, but we basically took the Superior Medical sign from 80 feet to 60 feet. We reduced the size of the tenant signs on the building from 50 feet to 35 feet, which currently is what you see on the building today. And we reduced the number of additional parking structure signs by 2, as well as we changed the location of the signs per, his name's escaping me, one of the commissioners' direction. He actually had a good idea that made it better for wayfinding, actually. One of the commissioners also recommended that we reach out to CDOT to try to get the Superior Medical Center logo on one of those it's called the logo program, but it's basically an exit sign. Currently, we're still in the process. It hasn't been that easy to get a definitive answer from them. As you may notice, the McCaslin one is full. so there's not like an empty place for it, so we'd have to figure out how to extend that. And while we think that it's a good idea and something that we're going to continue to look into, kind of once you get to the exit, it doesn't tell you where to go. So we think that it's limited in its effectiveness for wayfinding and clearly for the tenants and the branding. So here's the actual resolutions from the Planning Commission. So we made the technical red line corrections. We presented the entire FDP set, is what B says. C, the Planning Commission recommended that we do not place signs on the east elevation of the parking garage. We are proposing to place those signs on the east elevation, so that's the one variance from their request. And then we have also agreed to D, which is all requested illuminated signs subject to this application shall turn on no earlier than dusk and shall turn off 30 minutes after the close of business, which I said we will do, regardless of what transpires here.
Clarification, which does east face 36?
Yeah, I'll it does.
Okay, you're going to show a picture?
Yeah, I'll show you a picture. Do you mind if I just run through this and then
Sure.
we'll focus more time on that. So one other thing, so we are proposing for the tenant signs to be backlit because that is the current standard of the Downtown Superior Plan. If you notice, the Floyds and even the Chicago pizza place all have backlit signs. And then kind of as Touchstone Cornerstone came up here and represented, I just want to reassure the type of logos and the type of providers that are going to be on the building. They are high quality healthcare providers. They're all essential providers, which is a term under CMS. Which are providers that provide ambulatory patient services, rehab, pediatric care, primary care, and lab. And then again, we are proposing 3 additional east-facing signs in the parking garage, and these are really coveted sign locations for existing tenants to help with branding. Here's a chart of kind of the current tenants, and the big takeaway here is kind of when you look at the dollar amount of the investment that they're making in rent and physical improvements, millions of dollars, and then also looking at the length of term. These providers are here for 7 years, 10 years, Cornerstone already. There's extensions built in to these leases, so they'll likely be here longer, or hopefully. And only one of them currently has permitted signs, and the other 2 do not. And then there's also this undisclosed healthcare system that we're talking to that is looking at taking the entire 4th floor, and they're also interested in signage. This is a signage chart. It's better explained when I actually take you to the elevations. Before I get into that, this is just meant to show, when I said that our signs are so for example, the Floyd's barbershop sign is 60 feet, and that's the same size sign that we're proposing for the Superior Medical Center. Our tenant signs will be smaller than that. They'll be 35 feet. But as you can see here, here's what the sports stable already has approved. You can see 125 feet, 225, 125, a couple 45. So they're larger signs, or they're large signs. So our proposed west building elevation sign here is we are proposing 2 additional signs. So one would be a tenant sign, and one would be a Superior Medical Center sign. This is better shown. Or sorry, I'll just take you through the elevations first. So then on the north building elevation, these are 2 new signs that we're proposing. So this would be the 60-foot would be a Superior Medical Center sign. The 35-foot would be a tenant sign. That's the north building. The north garage elevation is 3 additional signs. This one here would be a large Superior Superior Medical Center sign, and there's an existing approved sign up in this little parapet area, and then we're asking for 2 additional tenant signs there at 35 feet. And then on the east garage elevation, we're asking for a Superior Medical Center sign at 60 feet. The 35-foot, this is where the urgent care already is shown, so we're asking for 2 35-foot signs, which is the same size, below for the existing tenants. And so here's kind of the best, easiest way to understand it. So as you can see, here's the west and south elevation. The sports table would be there. This is when you're pulling in. So currently approved is the Cornerstone sign, Touchstone sign, and the BCH sign, or the locations at least. And so we're asking for, I guess, 3 net on this face. And then this is just kind of relating the elevation to the rendering. And then here's the north and west elevation. So I showed those 2, but this is the north side would be 1 tenant, and then you'd also have the 60-foot Superior Medical Center, which we think will help for just name recognition for smaller tenants, as well as to brand Superior with this high-quality medical office building. And then, so this is, again, just putting in perspective the north elevation, which I just walked through. And then this is a photorealistic view of the garage east elevation. So currently, the urgent care is allowed. And so we'd be asking for 2. And then this is a downlit Superior Medical Center sign. I forgot to mention that. The Superior Medical Center 60-foot signs will all be downlit, and the tenant signs are all going to be backlit, like the existing signs. The downlit signs are less impactful. And here's the east elevation. Again, this is just showing the plan with the photorealistic. And then here's the north garage elevation. And as I mentioned earlier, you got the Superior Medical Center sign will be there. And then this is already approved, and then we're asking for 2 more. And then that's the photorealistic. And then so one other thing I wanted to show was that there are other buildings like this off of freeways in Colorado, off of freeways next to residential areas. This is Buck Creek Medical Center, and this is in Avon, Colorado, right by Beaver Creek, and Centura Health is the tenant, large, well-known healthcare provider. And there's a lot of signage, and also notice that this signage is illuminated all night. So that is the end of my formal presentation.
Thank you. Kevin, question?
I'll start with a disclaimer. I work for a healthcare IT organization, to the best of my knowledge, which is owned by a healthcare distribution company. To the best of I have no affiliation with any of the healthcare entities here. Much of your phrasing certainly sounds familiar, and certainly things I think about every day, but I have no business interaction with any of you, with any of the tenants. But for those that know I work in healthcare today, in the event you're interested. Number 2, thank you for investing in our community. I recognize this is not a well-established pocket of healthcare infrastructure, and you guys went out there and you made really significant investments, and really the first people outside of the sports stable to be vertical in that area, and grateful and impressed with your entrepreneurship. So thank you for that. Question both for you and for town staff. There's obviously a master developer that has the lion's share of what we refer to as downtown. Any coordination with the master developer around this signage?
Yes, I worked with Bill Jenks on this. And I know he's working with kind of more of a global signage plan. but he has approved kind of all of this signs, or all the signs that I proposed, as well as was a proponent of making sure that they stay backlit for the tenant signs to be consistent with everything else that's going in.
Okay. So I'm glad you're working with Ranch Capital. I recognize you are the applicant here, so you can only be judged, to my knowledge, on your application and not on the application from Bill Jenks. So but I'm asking about the level of coordination there, and it sounds like you've done some coordination. So he's come to the board a couple times around signage, and he had a presentation which arguably may not have gone as well as yours this evening, where we sort of said, no, you're going to need to bring in some expertise, and went with I believe it was a Boulder-based outfit to help with kind of some master planning around signage. Are you working with that same outfit?
No, we're not, but I believe that our building signs are complementary with their intent. Again, their stuff is more monument and circulation-based stuff. Ours is, I'm not going to say blocking and tackling building signs, but not as complicated. We have been, just so you know, we have been working with Intergroup Architects, who is a local architecture firm.
You guys we have a few candidates in the office, in the audience, and one of the top 5 complaints I get around living in Superior when you run into somebody in the grocery store is that we are cluttered, is the word often used, with signs, whether or not it's road signs or speed signs or one-way signs, and it's a popular, common discussion. I'm struggling. I don't want to say I appreciate what you're offering today without seeing the broader picture of the signage around there. And am I going to get a application tomorrow from the hotel that will be open in the spring, and Bill Jenks and the Ranch Capital folks will want some different monument signs. I'm having a difficult time personally understanding the macro impact of the signage in this area. So I'm really interested in what my colleagues have to say about the signage, and of course we'll open it up to public comment as well. But most importantly, I just want to say, I really want to hear from you guys what we need, what this community needs to do to make you successful, because I recognize you have some vacancy there, and you've probably had it for longer than you'd like.
Yeah. So I mean, just to speak to that, we haven't. We've signed one letter of intent since we've been involved for 2 years in this, and as we know, there's to pay for the high infrastructure investment. There's higher levies on this. We all know that. So there's economic, but again, we believe in the project. We believe in the area, and our predominant healthcare system tenant believes in it as well. This is just a very huge and important ask for the project, but for them as well.
Okay, thanks. Other questions?
So thank you. I guess my question is probably more directed towards Stephen. With respect to the Sports Stable building, so how many signs do we have that are east-facing on the Sports Stable, and do any of them turn off at night? I haven't been on 36 at that hour.
So currently, we just have the one Floyd sign, but as been illustrated, I haven't counted them in a while, but there's probably like half a dozen signs that are permitted on the east side of the Sports Stable. There's kind of just clusters that were done through the...
So there's a Floyd's Barbershop sign.
That's the one that's currently out.
There isn't a Sports Stable sign as well?
There may be a Sports Stable sign. I think that the Floyd's is the only one I've heard about illumination-wise. And I don't think they were turning their lights off appropriately. So that's the other thing we heard from the Louisville neighbors, and now they are. So we've contacted them to make sure that everyone's in compliance and has been related. So I think the two impactful signs were the Floyd sign and the urgent care sign, and they're both now going off after hours. So.
Okay. And what time are
Floyd's closes at 9.
Floyd's 9?
Yeah.
Okay. And so is that going to be, are the signs going to turn off depending on when the businesses are closed?
That's how the design guidelines read. It's about 30 minutes that Commissioner Pennington, or Pro Tem Pennington mentioned, is that's from the design guidelines.
Okay. And the sports stable building can have how many signs on each? Half a dozen?
It's about that. I'd have to count it. We
It
go to
can
the-
have or it does have.
It was approved for that many. It was approved for that many, yeah.
Okay.
And maybe a few more than that, but it's around.
Are we anticipating actually having that many signs on the building?
When the Floyd's application came in, I inquired as to, the size of that sign in relation to the size of the actual tenant. And the response we got was the first person that's asked. So we're happy to give it to them. But that was over a year ago, so.
Okay. So we're going from right now a total of 6 by my count, which are the existing allowed signs, and we're increasing that to 16 total signs based on what's between the garage and then the medical building. Is that the right count?
I count 10.
10 additional?
Yes.
Same number
Yeah,
you got.
yeah.
You went from 6 to 16.
Sorry.
Right, okay.
I was doing the.
So 10 additional signs. And the design guidelines limit the size of all the signs in this area to 25 square feet, is that correct?
So the design guidelines speak only to it's read as like the entrance to an office building. So at an entrance or over the entrance to an office building, office uses are allowed 25 square feet.
So of the signs, so there's nothing in the design guidelines that speaks to the actual building, Superior Medical Center building signs?
No.
Okay. And then, so in terms of complying with, I didn't see this in the memo, but how many of these signs are compliant with the design guidelines, if any, and how many are not?
None of them are.
And that's all because they're bigger than the 25 square foot?
Correct. I mean, they're all, so the way that the original approval went was, the 3 net new signs on the parking garage were not contemplated by the PD. So the parking garage signs were approved through that FDP process as an exception. Because, the only thing that was contemplated on the parking garage was, parking garage sign. So that was allowed through the original medical office building final development plan in 2016. And then at that time, the tenants didn't really, we had Cornerstone as a tenant, but nobody really knew how the building would, evolve or how it would fill out. So as part of that process, we asked about signs, and we do this all the time where we push for them to give us, what they're going to need, and folks don't necessarily know yet until they have their, so we ended up getting 3 signs, 2 of which face south towards the sports stable, and 1 of which faces west on the medical office building. And then the other 3 are on, 2 on the north side of the garage and 1 facing east on the garage.
So for the tenant-specific signs, they are going to be 35 square feet. So
35 square feet, that's
10 square feet larger than what the design guidelines otherwise would allow.
correct.
And then in terms of the actual signage for the buildings, we've got the existing PD that allows, the urgent care sign. And how big is that existing sign?
The urgent care sign is 35 feet.
That's 35 feet. So we don't have anything that is of the size of what they're asking for right now, right? For this Superior Medical Center building sign, right? That's
So the Bolts Community Health sign that's up, and for the community, are you asking for this?
I'd like to know what's the biggest sign that we have on the building right now as approved?
35 square feet.
35 square feet. And now the biggest sign that they're asking for right
Is
now
60.
is going to be 60.
But those signs are, they're just block letters with gooseneck lighting, downlighting those signs. They're not illuminated themselves.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Okay, other questions?
Well, I'm going to make a statement about How do you, well, a question, how does one enter, if I'm going to Cornerstone Orthopedics, a tenant, do I enter the same way as if I'm the tenant of the unspecified major medical provider? Do I go through a common entrance?
Yeah, so this is the main entrance here, is under where BCH already has its sign. And then there's also on the second floor of the garage, connects from the garage to the MOB, and that's where Cornerstone currently is. So that's a connection. And then there's also a connection here, which is a minor connection.
So where I'm getting at is if the board wishes to seek minimalization of signs, we could allow the 60-foot Superior Medical Center sign on its 3 faces, right, that you want it on? Okay. And then the individual tenants in their own directions say, enter the front entrance of the Superior Medical Center and follow the placard on the wall, right? Because that'll tell them where to find Cornerstone and where to find the unspecified major medical provider, et cetera. So the most important thing for direction purposes is to have the building well identified as Superior Medical Center.
Correct. For technical wayfinding, as we kind of brought up other points, there's other considerations.
Yeah, I get the other points. If I were Cornerstone and I had put all these millions of dollars in it and I'm creating this integrated center, I'd want my name on the outside of the building too, right? I would. I understand that. But I'm just trying to give the board a different option that says first and foremost of importance is to have this well marked from every vantage point for Superior Medical Center.
Just to speaking to that, I mean, that is definitely important for just name recognition, and you want to name a building, and we came up with the Superior Medical Center. I forget what it was, Superior Medical Office Building or something before. But completely selfishly, from an owner standpoint, and as an applicant, we are much more conscious, just considering of making our existing tenants happy and attracting new tenants to have signage for future tenants. So if there, however, we want the additional signs, but if there were a trade-off, we'd prefer to have tenant signage than the Superior Medical Center signs, or maybe as many.
What's your health system, what's the maximum signage that's allowable today for your health system customer, for the proposed tenant of the health system? Stephen, how big, according to the PD today, without a variance, what could they do? The new tenant on the 3rd floor.
So are you asking about the existing sign allowances, or if it was a net new sign in addition?
Pure existing sign allowance.
They have space for 35 square foot signs that are still available.
Which would be where?
Here and here. Those are the 2 on the medical center, and then there's 1 more on the garage.
And nothing, and then there's 1 more on the garage.
Correct.
Just to get the conversation going, I do not have trouble with having an individual company who's spending millions of dollars be able to have his signage on the outside. And from a marketing standpoint, to show the thriving nature of this enterprise, I would recommend that too. So would you address the lighting considerations? Because apparently at the Planning Commission there was fairly significant complaint from residential folks who got the light in their faces.
Right.
So how have you addressed the light that emanates from these signs?
Let me find the best, or keep on going past it. So the sign that everyone is talking about was the urgent care sign. And as I mentioned, so September 18th, I learned that urgent care sign, it was being lit past 9:30. It was being lit all night to the early hours in the morning. 2 days later, after hearing the Planning Commission out and talking to the tenant, we no longer illuminate that sign past 9:30. So kind of our initial feedback, because we had subsequent submittals and interest from the community, was that the real big issue was it being lit all night, and we nipped that in the bud that night. I mean, the reality of it is they'll be lit. Most tenant signs will be lit for 3 hours a day during kind of from now until spring. Some times of the year they won't ever be lit.
Okay, so what complaints, if any, have you received about that urgent care sign since it's been, or Stephen or Matt or whoever, since it's been shut off at 9:30?
I can just say firsthand, there's a lot less Louisville residents at our hearings.
Okay, yeah, and I am interested in public comment on that. But to me, that's the issue. I have a big old well-lit street lamp on my front corner, and it about blinds me every time I look through my main window. So I get it. If it faced my bedroom, I would have to do something. Vandalism comes to mind. I mean, it's bright. So I get it. So I am interested in hearing these people.
Okay. Are there other questions before we go to public comment? Then we will do public comment, and any final questions, then we'll close the public hearing, have discussion.
I just have one question. On the signage that's on the other side of the building, or, for example, where it says Touchstone, is Touchstone on that end of the building, or can anyone go in, or that's the only piece that feels a little confusing to me. If you go in that entrance, are you going to Touchstone? And is that confusing to someone who's coming off the street?
So it's an open corridor, but Touchstone Suite is right next to there. So it kind of logically, it releases into the main lobby too. It's just it's a hallway.
Okay, that for me is a little bit confusing because I'm just not sure that maybe when you make your appointment, you would know, oh, come in under the Touchstone entrance. So that's the only piece I would say as somebody who's coming from the outside is that it looks like you're going to Touchstone. And so if there's a way that you can make it clear on the outside of the building that enter here for all facilities, because this feels a little weird to me.
Again, in the main entrance, most patients go to is that one.
And there's somehow that it delineates that that's the main entrance or entrance to all tenants or something like that. Okay, that was just me being one of the people who freaks out when I have to go to a new place and don't know where I'm going. So if they're coming in off the parking garage, then is that really and truly what you see as the primary entrance? Because that's where most people are going to enter the building. And then is it clear that this is entrance to all tenants or something like that?
That's a good point, yeah. Currently there's signage that says to the medical office building, but right now Cornerstone is the only tenant on that floor.
Okay.
And the building is only 42% leased, so the garage isn't as full as we'd like it to be.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't sign it up in such a way that it then makes it confusing for people to go in.
But you raised a point. The number of signs you're proposing, when you're 100% full and you've got this limited number of signs you can have on the outside, are you proposing those to be the signs for the key tenants?
Yes.
Or the first tenants, who may not be the long-term key tenants?
So right now we are not accepting leases longer than 7 years. That's our lender requirement for the first phase. I guess we can go down lower, but they'd have to come out of pocket more for their TIs.
Did you mean shorter than 7 years?
I did mean shorter than 7 years. And then just in terms of the universe of potential users, so as you've seen, Cornerstone and Touchstone's identified the to be defined healthcare system is going to take one of these. So the thought would be leaving one more sign for a large full floor user on the 3rd floor. So we would be reserving one there, and then one on and then one on the garage as well. So one for that could be the healthcare system user. So you can see Cornerstone has one. That can be the healthcare system user that we're talking to, and then we'd be reserving one more for a future tenant.
When did the need for additional signs kind of emerge? Like, when did you guys realize that what was approved was not sufficient, and why are we talking about this now? Why wasn't this brought to the board's attention during the initial approvals?
Right. So I guess one thing is we got involved after the project was approved. So Sawtooth Development was the original developer that entitled the FTP. We partnered with them, sort of joint venture. We took over it. So a little background. All my company does is we're called PMB, and we're kind of Colorado West Coast based healthcare real estate development, seniors housing, medical office, post-acute. So this is kind of our world. And when we got involved, I mean, one of the things that we talked about was its proximity on the 36 and the other economic considerations I mentioned of the being higher rent. We saw that as a potentially needing more signage locations. And so we went and we took it to market for about a year and a half, as I mentioned, kind of after when we first got involved. And every major tenant that we talked to wants signage. All of our existing tenants that don't have it in their lease, they want signage. It's just become a huge driver, and for a lot of the reasons that we mentioned. And it's becoming more and more relevant in healthcare in general, as we're seeing across the country, really.
Okay, any further questions? All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing up to public comment. If you'd like to make public comment on this public hearing, please just give a wave and I'll signal you to come up to make your comments. Public comment. Teresa.
Last time. Good evening, Teresa Clark, Superior resident. To Trustee Ryan's point, even I get questions about the signs around. And especially when we're dealing with these lighted signs, this is kind of it is becoming an issue. And it's not just, just to give you some idea, almost the entire row of residents that are on the south side of the residential buffer can see the Kohl's sign at night. So these big lights are much more obvious to the community here. And the other thought that I have is I often hear the Ranch Capital representative say he's concerned about the quality of life for his future residents. And I'm not certain that a lot of thought has gone into an exception to the guidelines in terms of lit lights and them shining into the residents, the new residents' windows. So the challenge with the way that this is designed, this particular medical building within that community, is it is, first of all, difficult to find the building, but the most challenging part of it is to find the entrance of the building. So if there was a way to identify the building and then the entrance of the building, and then within the building have the marquees that say Cornerstone is this way, Touchstone is this way, that's a consideration. And the other consideration is when you look at the medical center right across the highway from the Superior Medical Center, Avista, they don't have huge signs for every tenant within there. So, it's like you for that hospital on the right side, as you're facing the structure, it's the hospital, but on the left side is their medical pavilion, their plazas, where like Boulder Medical Center's in there. There's a couple of other physicians' offices and specialty offices in there as well. And they don't have this need for the exterior signs because they have the building labeled as "Come to Avista Plaza 1." So I suspect actually that it would suffice if we could label this building the Superior Medical Center or Superior Medical Building and greatly reduce the tenant signs. So that's, and here again, it's just exception after exception to the design guidelines that were, I think that if we're going to go through this time and time again, that we really should have an entire public process for a few months and just wait on all of the development going on here to revamp the design guidelines before we go forward with anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Any additional public comment? Okay. Any additional comments, questions from the board before we close?
I guess I think I misunderstood, and I didn't. So question just for the applicant again. So can you have a, do you mind coming up? You have a healthcare system provider as a prospective tenant. I don't want to ask the question, and what is their requirement for signage?
So it's prominent signage is required. We're running out of spaces with fulfilling their requirement, with their need, and also fulfilling the existing tenants' desire for signage and recognition for their investment, really being the first ones in. And they've been hounding us for signage since the very beginning for a lot of reasons. But there's not a specific number that they've said, if this doesn't happen, then we're not interested. And I don't want to misrepresent anything specifically, but it's very important to them, and that's one of the main reasons I'm up here.
Was there anything, I may have, a question maybe for Matt, you said you had coordinated with Bill, and I think you used the word approved, not that we need anything approved by Bill, but I was pleased that you're collaborating. Is there anything in the packet to demonstrate that collaboration with Bill and Ranch Capital?
No, we did not include that in the memo. We will in the future, though, include that information.
I mean, you know what I'm saying,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
yeah.
You're part of a community of downtown,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to, I'm not a sign guy, right? So, but I learned a lot in the last year and thought more about signs than I would have expected.
Right.
So, but I understand, we heard loud and clear from Bill that signs are important, and that's what tenants require. And so it is, the community wants you to be successful. So I think well, it's not a question, it's more of a comment, so I'll say that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So another question for you. So if you do the downlit 60-foot Superior Medical Center sign, why wouldn't a downlit tenant sign work?
I think given its location on the building, lower to be consistent with the other view, the other line of view, to have the same type of sign. And then on the top,
You mean because there's already one there?
There's already one there, and then also when you look at the plans for the future downtown Superior and the other signs kind of across the future development is another.
They're going to be backlit?
They have the right to be.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything further before I close the public hearing?
So, yeah, I have a question. So Teresa had a good idea, I thought. How do you mark the entrances, especially that main public one, the one that isn't attached to the parking garage?
I cannot think offhand. how we market. I mean, there's an address, there's, I look to the people that may be there more than I am.
Address, there's an awning above it.
Yeah, the awning.
Boulder Community Hospital is right above it.
So you tell people to look for the awning.
I believe there's something there that says main entrance. I've been there as a transporter of a patient and didn't have any issues finding the main entrance.
Yeah, I've been there as well. I'd say it's, if you were...
Obvious?
Yes.
It's about what you would expect in a retail healthcare environment. It's not going to be as good as,
like the
we in healthcare
it's
have
not the
yet.
emergency room.
Yeah, it's not a blanket
Yeah.
emergency room, but I mean, you have to pause and think for a minute, and you may have to walk into the wrong suite and say, where is so-and-so, or look on a board.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. It's a good comment, and I think it's one that you guys need to we want everybody that goes through there to have a really positive experience, because you are going to be one of the bigger brands within our town, right? And so we want to help you hear from us, this board. We want to help you be successful. We're here to talk about exterior signs today, but I think interior signs is a good comment.
Okay.
We need to help you there.
Okay.
So have you determined you're going to go by Superior Medical Center?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to throw out there, because I like to throw these things out there. I love, Dr. Sheen's been here for a large part of the 8 years I've been here. And it just seemed like a name called like Superior Integrated Health Solutions or something like that, right?
We need more signage for that one.
Yeah, but forget the solutions, just Superior Integrated Health.
Yeah.
Captures the uniqueness of this a whole lot better than Superior Medical Center. Just saying, just a thought.
Noted. Thank you.
Okay, anything further? Sandy, before I close the
Not my
public hearing.
Sandy. Not me, Sandy.
Okay, public hearing's closed. Discussion.
I'll start. Questions, I really appreciate the investment that Dr. Sheen and the organizations have made, and I've learned over the last year and in my experience in healthcare that signage matters. The retailization is completely consistent with everything I know. I wish we had another 2 or 3 months, Ranch Capital here, to see the entire plan for signage. And so I'm supportive. I didn't see any sign that was extraordinarily too large, with the exception of the Superior Medical Center, with the big sign that was overhead lit, but it's overhead lit, so it's got to be huge. The backlit signs to me didn't seem that large. But I wish I could see the whole plan for everything in the sports stable, and what those monument signs are going to look like, and what does that lighting look like, and is all this stuff really complementary? So that's the only thing that I worry about, that we're going to make a mistake. I mean, directionally I'm supportive. I just don't want to make a mistake, and then something looks really cluttered, and a year from now or 2 years from now I say, God, I wish we'd just pause that for a few months.
Okay. Others?
I think the thing that's a little frustrating for me is this is not the sort of thing that should come as a surprise, right? That you need to have adequate signage to, identify the prospective tenants that you're going to be having in a building. So, the fact that this gets approved with 6 signs and now we're moving it up to 16, on its face to me seems like it's a rather large increase. That said, I don't think it's unwarranted. It's just one of those things that they should have asked for 16 signs, 20 signs, when they originally applied, and that was the appropriate time to have the discussion, rather than, now and then saying, okay, well, this is what was approved originally, this is what the design guidelines say, and now asking us to try to come up with some justification for why it makes sense to deviate from what was planned in the design guidelines. And I think along 36, you know, it's a busy highway. It's not a you know, light free zone, right? There's a lot of businesses and hotels and medical centers. There's a hospital down in Broomfield that's off the side. There's the hospital in Louisville that's, you know, off the side of the highway. You can see it. You need to see it. So it's not like this is necessarily a, you know, serene kind of natural environment that we're really concerned about light pollution. And I think that, you know, for the businesses to thrive, they need to have adequate wayfinding and you know, a signage to let people who are driving on 36 know that, okay, not only is there a sports stable there, oh, there's an urgent care there, oh, there's, you know, this actual, you know, medical practice. It's not just an urgent care. I think we've done the right thing, and I think the applicant has done the right thing, and I appreciate this from the applicant in terms of listening to the Planning Commission, being sensitive to the neighbors in Louisville. You know, I think that is, I don't think it was necessarily, you know, we didn't need to do that, right? We could just have those lights blaring to identify the businesses, but I think it's part of being a good neighbor and being sensitive to the folks that live across the street. So I think that, you know, that is, you know, that goes a long way to show that, you know, we're being reasonable here, they're being reasonable here. But again, it comes down to, you know, why are we having this discussion now rather than, you know, 2 years ago when we could have had the foresight to adequately plan it. You know, I think in terms of the signage, you know, where it's going to look on the building itself, I understand it, that it's needed for the businesses to thrive and for them to even want to locate here. You know, I get that. I'm not too concerned about, you know, the consistency with, you know, the branding of downtown Superior. Because, you know, I don't know, I view, you know, every business is, you know, Floyd's is going to have their sign up and they have got their branding, and, you know, they're not going to change that branding, you know, just to, you know, gel better with the development. They want to identify their business with the branding that they've designed and trademarked and you know, built a brand around. So, you know, in terms of advertising to the public and for people to be able to identify these are the businesses that are in this building, I'm not too concerned with how that's going to necessarily fit with the rest of the entire development. Where I am somewhat concerned is, you know, is this a slippery slope in terms of, well, this building was originally approved with 6 signs and now we're going to increase it to 16. You know, what else is going to come down the pike, and are we going to have to make some additional variances for the next user who says, well, actually, I need an additional, you know, 2.5 times what I originally asked for. But all that said, I think I understand the application. I think it's warranted, and I'm willing to vote in favor of the application tonight and help this business thrive and make the variance, notwithstanding what the design guidelines say.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Which Sandy would like to go next?
The piece that's been a problem for me is the lack of consistency between the signage on the buildings that face 36. I mean, I understand what, you know, the medical office building is going to have smaller signs than the signs that are sitting on the sports stable. And so for me, there's just that we don't have a guideline for what's going to face outward is a concern. I'm very sensitive to what Cornerstone and Touchstone are dealing with, because they're going to have a smaller sign than some guys on a building right next door. But that's an issue that has happened. I don't know if I can ask this question right now, but I don't understand the Planning Commission's request to not place signs on the east elevation of the parking garage, and I didn't really see clarity on that, and I would just like to, Stephen, can you give some insight on why they were opposed to that? Because for me, I don't understand why that's a particular problem.
Yeah, Stephen Williams, town staff. The concern for Planning Commission for the east-facing garages is just from the Louisville residents primarily. That's where the light impacts that they heard from were. I also think that they had some comments or consideration just about the visibility on US 36 in general, and being, those signs being more visible perhaps from, north or south than actually directly east. Those face more towards Louisville directly than what you'd see going up and down the freeway.
Okay. From that standpoint, the signs on the east elevation don't bother me any more than any of the other signs. So I understand their perspective. So, I don't have a particular problem with this plan. I mean, I understand your needs. My bigger concern is people understanding how they get into that building, but I haven't been over there. And so as long as we feel like we've got that problem solved, I would really like to see, before we have any more buildings come forth, though, that we try and encourage the developer to get some consistency so we don't keep having this problem with our tenants and our larger buildings that are being built. So for me, I think you've made a really good faith effort to try and address the problems. It's a little concerning to me that we actually have something in the design guidelines that says all lights have to go off 30 minutes after the business closes, and that we as a town, we're not checking on that. So let's make sure that we adhere to those rules as a good neighbor. But other than that, I'm supportive of the application, and I would say let's move forward.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. Sandy?
So, Stephen, I should have asked this earlier, but I didn't. What's the time sensitivity of this decision? They're only 45% leased right now. And so if we did, so we went down the path Kevin went down, which is to request of the developer Ranch Capital to have a broader sign plan that included the various tenants. What's the time sensitivity of making this decision tonight?
So I guess that's, to me, a two-part question. In terms of the sensitivity, from what I understand from the applicant, they have somebody that's close to signing a lease, and this is critical. And I think it's been explained, he just has limited sign allowances, so it's hard for him to designate signs to somebody that may be willing to sign a lease versus the people that have already established there.
Right.
He's just running out of signage. So I think it's sensitive in the matter of the existing businesses. They've wanted signage for some months now, and he's got a new potential leasee who also wants signage before they make their final claim. So I think the time sensitivity is fairly critical. And then in terms of, I'll pen it in right down the second part of your question.
Well, let me
Ranch
just ask
Capital or RC Superior's overall signage.
Oh, so I guess in that sense, I don't know what we get from that. I know that we have the downtown, kind of wayfinding signs coming along, but I think that, in terms of this building, I don't know that that's going to have much effect on it. We have wayfinding signs that are going to help, get you to different places.
Let's say coffee shop A goes in on the corner somewhere. Are they limited to this 25 square foot sign?
So they have retail signage. So retail signage is a different allowance. The 25 square foot, I want to say it's 1 foot for every lineal foot of frontage. So
1 square foot.
Yeah, 1 square foot. So across the street at this Center Point where Starbucks is, all of those tenants that face both east and west, they have 25 square foot signs facing both directions, and they have
25 feet
roughly
flags.
that, and then the hotel, the Element Hotel has like 80 square feet of signage on most of their elevations. I think one, just based on the fact that the emblem is not on the end, it's on the top. There's more square footage there, so it ended up being like 105. But I don't even think that we had a hotel sign allowance.
Let's use Floyd's as the example. It's a pretty big sign.
It's a pretty big sign, yeah.
How much frontage do they have?
15 or 20 feet.
It's a lot bigger than a 15.
Right, but that's, so the FDP for the sports stable got approved with sign bans.
Yeah, I
that
know.
allowed those
We just got to be, I think the slippery slope is, do we open up, just use another, open up the can of worms for, now Jenks and the next tenant is saying, well, I need bigger and better. Now that we've approved these 45 square foot signs, does the next tenant say, I need a 55 square foot sign? And 2 years from now, we start to look like the Vegas Strip. That's not, and if I'm hearing that this is all, my personal thing is it's complementary, and I don't mean just the brand, because I love what Jenks has done, what Ranch Capital has done around that. We directionally approved the one that sort of looked like the stone, and I think that looks really cool from an aesthetic, and I know that's different than what we're talking about here.
Right.
But so long as this is complementary to everything we're doing there, and the advice from staff is that we're not opening up this can of worms, and this is what's needed, and it's a unique requirement because of the retailization of healthcare, and we're going to make these signs available, and we're going to make this business successful. I'm all for it.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely see the need for this. If I were a multi-million-dollar tenant, I would want my sign out there too. So I'm very sympathetic with that, and I'm inclined to approve this tonight. However, broader, I suggest this be a retreat topic or a work session topic or a board agenda topic in the near future, so the board can get an idea of what we've already entered into. I didn't know the hotel sign was that big until you said it here.
Yeah, I mean, and part of it is scale. I mean, like the hotel's, 4 stories tall.
Right.
It's
well, this
wider. This is 4 stories too, but the hotel's probably spans like 160 feet on each of the elevations.
That's the point. Floyd's is oversized. This doesn't feel oversized to me.
Correct.
I think Sandy had a good point, however, on that. I believe that's the east face, right, where you've already got signage on there. How is this going to look in comparison to the signage that's already on there?
So all the individual tenants are going to have the same, and that's one of the things that the design guidelines does speak to in terms of internally lit signage. They're all individual, pan channel.
But doesn't the parking garage face?
The parking garage faces
the same as as Sports Stable. That one
It faces to the sports stable, the parking garage sign.
So from 36, I'm going to see that long wall of Sports Stable, and I'm going to see that one face of the parking garage.
Correct. Yeah.
So is all the signage on the Sports Stable that's already there, is this copacetic, that Superior Medical Center copacetic with that? Will it peacefully coexist and look decent?
As much as it can. I mean, the sports stable signage was allowed. I mean, they have kind of, different bands and different locations. It wasn't it wasn't anything I was trying to mirror or have them replicate. So the things we worked on with this application were getting them to have linear kind of sign bands that have the same height and dimensions of everything. So originally when they came in, they were asking for 50 square foot signs. They wanted bigger signs than what they had allowed. And, we went and looked at it and thought that the urgent care sign was plenty big. Boulder Community Health arguably is a little small. Well, that's because it's kind of got a lot of letters to go in there. So that's what we were looking at. So we try to make it consistent to
So in your professional opinion, does it coexist well? Will it coexist well?
I don't know that was a goal, or it should have been a goal. So, okay.
Are you happy with it?
I'm happy with this application, yes.
With the particular look of the sign?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm for this tonight, but I do think this board has the ability to understand and perhaps to determine some good outcomes as this whole thing builds out, if you're totally aware of what we've already entered into versus what we might be able to affect in the future.
So just to clarify for you, the Superior Medical Center signs, they're all going to look the same. So that you're going to have that kind of consistency.
Right.
For the tenant signs. Everybody wants, Boulder Community Health uses a blue logo. The next tenant may use a different color logo.
But
We're not
for
going to
these
have,
tenant signs,
they're going to have the same box.
they're the same
That's about what we shoot for in terms
It's
of
that same
consistency. Yeah.
dimensioned
Right.
rectangle.
We discussed, like having everyone have black, lettering or whatever, and the building would be entirely consistent in terms of, font and lettering. It would just decrease in size, but
That doesn't-
tenants don't want that.
Yeah,
Tenants
I
want
agree.
their
They've got their individual
individuality.
logos, but
Yep.
as long as we've got the consistency of the rectangle
Correct.
band, so it looks somewhat sophisticated rather than circle and triangle and
Right, and
whatever,
different
I think
shapes.
we're good.
No, that's why we do the
Okay.
sign bands. Okay.
Okay. I'll close out with my comments saying that I am in support of this proposal, and I want to absolutely think in terms of supporting our local businesses. I think it's a great opportunity to enhance our presence as a medical office destination, a medical center destination. I really like what I'm hearing about the integration of the different services there, and to get a full floor tenant that's going to make another significant investment in the community is, we absolutely want to support that. I'm certainly sensitive to making exceptions to our guidelines, but at the end of the day, that's what the Board of Trustees is really here for, is to hear cases, and we make decisions one way or the other. Sometimes we approve exceptions, and sometimes we don't, and that's really up to the board to evaluate everything case by case. If we were never going to make exceptions, we wouldn't need to be here. So I think that's the job of the board. I think this process has been good, as others have reflected on. They have met with the Planning Commission, met with neighbors, listened to the concerns, and adjusted the plans accordingly, and appreciate that effort. That goes a long way in helping us feel like that people felt like they've been heard, and that their concerns have been met, and we don't have a packed house tonight talking about lighting. So thank you for your work on doing that, and your concerns, and making those adjustments to the signs to when businesses close. So I am ready to entertain a motion.
I'll second my last one. I'm not ready to, I don't have it called up here.
We still have some other motions tonight. So.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve Town of Resolution number R-59, Series 2018, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an amendment to the final development plan for the Superior Medical Office Building and Parking Garage, lots 1A and 1B, Block 12, Superior Town Center, case number FDP 2018-4.
Motion by Trustee Laces, second by Mayor Pro Tem Pennington. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
All right, next on our agenda is item number 5, public hearings and adoptions of resolutions for the amendments to the 2018 budgets. This is something that we have to do each year to amend our 2018 budgets to, just going to close out the year.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. As good as Paul and his staff are, there are things that come up throughout the year that require us to do budget amendments towards the end of each year, and this is no exception to that. So Paul will go through each of the amendments that we're asking for tonight and entertain any questions the board might have.
Okay, at this time I'll open the public hearing. Proof of publication?
Yes, I have 4 publications.
4 publications have been confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Magley. Thank you for the intro, Mayor. That's exactly what I was going to say. These are very administrative. They're cleanup. We do them every year. Essentially, we budget's best guess, and things change throughout the process of the next 12 to 18 months. Generally, the good news is that most of these budget amendments, or many of these budget amendments, are required because we have additional revenue sources that we need to identify. Any budget amendments that aren't being covered by new revenues. Obviously, we have cash balances to cover those particular expenses. Another point to note is the budget that we approved last meeting that I'm trying to forget already, but no, the budget we approved last meeting, all those documents included all these budget amendments. So they were all these budget amendments were factored into the financial planning and in the 2019 budget, which you recently approved. So you're going to be approving budgets sitting as 3 different entities: the Town of Superior, Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, and the Superior Urban Renewal Authority. But I'm going to go through this relatively quick, a general summary of all these particular budget amendments, starting with the general fund. Any remaining revenues we have in the general fund, the plan for decades with the board has been to transfer these particular revenues, any excess revenues, to our capital improvement program. The good news here in 2018 is we have more revenues than we're expecting in the general fund. Expenses are at or below levels. So essentially we have an additional $850,000 surplus, or an additional $850,000 on top of the $2.15 million we initially budgeted to transfer monies from the general fund to the capital fund. So that's budget amendment number 1. We have a budget amendment in our open space fund of roughly $300,000 to account for things like establishing the turf on what's known as Tract H. Tract H is generally the buffer area between the Waterford development and downtown Superior. We had built most of that project last year. We had elected to, instead of doing turf, to do seed, and we needed to water that and get that in. Additionally, a number of these budget amendments, Tract H is an example. With a capital project, typically what will happen is we will budget the funds in year 1. And a typical capital project, we won't finish in 1 year. We'll finish over a period of 2 years, but we need to appropriate all the funds in year 1, and then any residual funds that we complete a project with, we need to essentially re-budget or reappropriate those funds in year 2. So that's what happened with Tract H, roughly $95,000 to finish that particular project. We had some drainage work, which was, the board had approved a number of drainage projects earlier in the year. One of those was in the Sagamore, immediately adjacent or west of the Sagamore development in that particular open space. So we're expensing roughly $25,000 of drainage improvements west of Sagamore to the open space fund. We, as part of the street project this year, we not only did the McCaslin work, but we did a myriad of additional projects. One of the additional projects included in our contractor's contract was through Tract A, which is the property immediately adjacent to Tract H. So it's essentially building a sidewalk from McCaslin to Tract H, and that was included within the street contractor's contract. And we had identified at that point in time that open space would be paying for that. So we're adjusting open space's budget accordingly. And then the last bit of work is for some additional Coal Creek corridor work. This is some work that was actually accelerated associated with Parks 1 and 2. We're doing the work now because we have the development projects that we're doing immediately adjacent to the creek. These are expenses that ultimately will look for reimbursement for, but the scope of those particular expenses over budget is roughly $75,000. Next series of budget amendments is our capital improvement fund. 2 projects there for a total budget amendment of $575,000. In late 2019, we had entered into a sale and purchase agreement of the property on the southeast corner of McCaslin and Marshall, the property we call the Pond 11 site or the Tesla site, where that property, the town-owned property, was sold for roughly $300,000, and then we agreed as part of the project to relocate some storm drainage pipes. So the $300,000 in the land sale is used for those particular improvements. And then an item that probably is not on your radar, but it's a result of the June 2018 hail event that we had in town. We had roughly 17 facilities that were damaged by that particular storm. So working through our insurance company, we received roughly a $203,000 check We ultimately will be doing roughly $275,000 worth of improvements. The delta between the check amount and the damage amount is insurance deductible and depreciation. So we'll be looking at maintaining, this is primarily roof and some of our solar panels on the roofing structure. Districts 2 and 3, this is the residual debt service for Districts 2 and 3 that's ending after 2018. Again, good news story that over the last couple of years, we've generated a little bit more property tax revenue than anticipated, a little bit more specific ownership tax, as well as interest income. So we're going to have small residual balances in those debt service funds when the debt is paid off at the end of 2018. So essentially talking with our accounting firm to remove that revenue and transfer it over to the general fund, we need to essentially expense it or create a budget to remove any of the residual monies in those operations when those funds are closed at the end of this year. Within our utility operation, which is known as Superior Metropolitan District number 1, we have 2 small capital budget amendments, and this falls into the category of starting the project in year 1, completing it in year 2. We had 3 maintenance capital projects within our sewer capital budget. These were improvements to our wastewater treatment plant that totaled roughly $150,000 that we didn't finish up until this year, year 2. And then we had an additional $175,000 in our storm capital fund specific to we did a material storm drainage project adjacent to the Snowmass development. And again, we initially budgeted those funds in 2017 and then completed the project in 2018. So we're merely reappropriating those funds. Then the final budget amendments you'll be considering wearing your Superior Urban Renewal Authority Commissioner hats is a recognition that sales tax receipts in the Superior marketplace are a little bit higher than we initially budgeted. So we essentially need to recognize that because those funds are ultimately transferred out of the Urban Renewal Authority either to the town's general fund or to pay off some developer liabilities that we have. So again, a good story there, revenue stronger than anticipated. So again, a very, very brief synopsis, very typical. All these expenses factored in when we were doing our financial planning and when we were approving the 2019 budget. That is all I have, pending any questions.
I only have one question. So that hailstorm that damaged the solar panels, is it still the best economic decision to replace a hailed out solar panel with a replacement solar panel, or should we be considering solar tiles and other technologies to meet, the solar environmental goal we have? So what are your thoughts on that?
Good point. The extent of the damage to the panels was less than $10,000. So if we were looking at wholesale, and what that means is there was an occasional solar panel
within a whole array.
Within a whole array.
Gotcha.
If it was an entire array that was destroyed, you're absolutely right. But we're just talking about a panel here, a panel there.
Okay, good.
Great answer.
All right, thank you. Any other?
Just kudos, man. Just good on you. I mean, even a good, hard question about a solar panel, you have a perfect answer. So, great presentation.
Hopefully it was an accurate answer, though.
I think so. Okay. I'll entertain motions.
Mark, are you ready?
I guess I'll start.
Did you close the public hearing?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Thank you. Always on track there. Okay, so we've gone through questions. Any public comment on our public hearing on budget amendments?
Got 2 finance people.
Ken.
3 in the audience.
Good evening, Ken Lish, 1326 South Idalia Court. Something, we haven't talked about this on the Open Space Committee, but a few of the members brought it to my attention and just asked that I do mention it during public comment. Looking at the 2017 and 2018 budget, in culmination, we're looking at nearly $1 million spent on the track day area. while I truly look forward to using those trails and may have snuck onto them and seen how great the views are back there, it wasn't necessarily on our priorities, and to sink so much money from the open space fund into that one area, considering that that's more than 20% of the fund in its whole, is a little bit frustrating, since it was never on our priorities list and kind of was forced upon us through the whole buffer fiasco that occurred. So just to voice a little bit of kind of frustration on how things ultimately worked, but still we're looking forward to adding a new trail and looking forward to using it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Additional public comment? All right, seeing none, anything additional before we close the public hearing? All right, public hearing's closed. Now I'll entertain motions.
Thank you. Do you want to have discussion after the public comment?
Any discussion? That'll be a good time.
So I forget which one tract A is, but tract A. Right, he said A and H, though, I thought. Right, but H is going to be reimbursed by the TIF.
Oh.
So both are, my understanding, Paul, keep me honest, is both will be reimbursed from the TIF.
That is our intent. Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. Yeah.
So say that again, Kevin, what's going to be reimbursed from TIF?
There will be an accounting adjustment from TIF dollars back into open space.
The
entirety of tract H improvements will be paid for out of TIF dollars, is my understanding.
Put back into open space funds?
Correct. We are summarizing those expenses. We are having the independent engineer review those particular expenses and certify them as eligible TIF reimbursable expenses.
An example of a non-eligible, my understanding would be the design, for example, in tract H. So, and maybe the engineer may disagree, but I think if we design tract H, put a tree here, not there, I think that's on the town. But the TIF, putting the tree and the actual tract H itself is, my understanding, should be reimbursable. Now, they still have to pass the engineer, the assessment, but that's my understanding.
So is that your understanding, Paul? Design is exempted?
We are going to submit all expenses associated with tract H,
Yeah.
and then we'll just have that dialogue if it's questioned.
Okay, good. Well, that's, I'm glad you guys told me that, because I agree with Ken, it is frustrating. So I'm glad that it hopefully will be put back in dollar for dollar.
Okay, any further discussion?
I'll start with the first one.
Go ahead.
Make a motion, Town of Superior ordinance number O-8, Series 2018, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2018.
Motion by trustee Ryan.
Second.
Second by trustee Lasis. All those in favor? Or do we need to roll call these? Roll call these, please.
Ryan?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes. Did you say Pennington?
I did say Pennington.
My hearing's going quickly. Yes.
Lasis?
Yes.
Hammerly?
Yes.
Folsom?
Yes.
Do it.
Next one.
Make a motion, Town of Superior resolution number R-60,
60.
Series 2018, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2018.
Second.
Motion by trustee Rand, second by trustee Hammerly. Roll call vote.
Folsom?
Yes.
Hammerly?
Yes.
Lasis?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes. Make a motion, Town of Superior resolution number R-61,
61.
Series 2018, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of... You want to make the last one? I'm sorry.
I think there are more.
There's one more.
Okay, there's one.
In the Metro District.
R-61, Series 2018, resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a supplemental budget for Superior Metropolitan District Number 2 and Superior Metropolitan District Number 3 for fiscal year 2018.
Motion by trustee Ryan.
Second.
Second by trustee Lasis. Roll call vote.
Folsom?
Yes.
Hammerly?
Yes.
Lasis?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
right, Sandy, finishes up.
I think there's two more.
Okay.
You guys need your practice, I don't.
Show them how it's done.
Well, I'll take the last one.
Okay. I'll make a motion approving Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Resolution SMD Number 1-9, Series 2018, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 approving a supplemental budget and appropriations for 2018.
Motion by Trustee Ryan.
Second.
Second by Trustee Hammerly. Roll call vote.
Do we need roll call votes on this?
No, we don't need only the town ones.
Okay. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Thank you. Next one. Last one.
I think this is the last one, Sura.
Yep.
Yeah. I make a motion to approve Sura Urban Renewal Authority Resolution Sura 3, Series 2018, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Superior Urban Renewal Authority approving a supplemental budget and appropriations for 2018.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Pennington and second by Commissioner Ryan. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. All right. Thank you all. We're done with a regular agenda. Next on our agenda is item number 6, executive session to hold a conference with the town attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-64024B on the topic of the property at 1500 Colton Road. I have a motion to go into executive session. Motion by Trustee Lesa, second by Trustee Hammerly. All those in favor? Okay, passes unanimous. May we take a 5-minute break? Okay, we're in break.